Chapter 3569. Puff. The old man was slashed apart. He could not stop the sword light at all. No matter how terrifying the old man's original body was, it was impossible to fight against Yi Shiwen with only a trace of spirit. Although the strength of Sword Master was far less powerful than the original body, he was also a celestial master of the second realm. He was not at the bottom. Yi Shiwen grabbed the celestial master Taoist tool armor after the old man transformed from the wisp of divine sense was smashed into pieces. The original body had the meritorious tyrant golden body. It was enough to compete with the celestial master level armor alone. However, Sword Master's avatar was far worse. Sword Dao focused on offense. It was also much weaker in defense. If one wanted to refine a celestial master level armor, the resources needed were astronomical. Sword Master's avatar had not even started to refine his own celestial master level armor, let alone defense. Now that he had this armor at the level of a heavenly venerate Dao artifact, his defensive power would be raised to a whole new level after he completely refined it. Even if he encountered a third realm heavenly venerate, they wouldn't be able to hurt him, and he would be able to escape unscathed. After all, he was different from the original body. He could not fight beyond his level. Even so, this was already very amazing. The old man obviously wanted to cultivate this Purple Eye Emperor as a key seedling. Otherwise, he would not easily give this celestial master level armor to her. Who knew that the Purple Eye Emperor would come to Buzhou Mountain to die, and this armor fell directly into Yi Shiwen's hands. Yi Shiwen grabbed this armor in his hand and explored it with his spirit. Only then did he know that this armor was called the Clothes of Destruction. It contained the law of destruction. As long as the law of destruction could be understood, there was even a chance for an emperor to be promoted to a celestial master. It was extremely amazing. Moreover, this method made Yi Shiwen gasp in amazement. He had used the law of destruction to refine the armor. One must know that the average person would use the law of destruction to attack, and would refine it into an offensive divine weapon. However, Yi Shiwen had taken a different approach now. He had used the law of destruction to refine a defensive armor. Because of the characteristics of the law of destruction, it could destroy everything. Even to the extreme, it could also destroy the attack of others. In this way, it could also achieve the effect of defense. The backup that Yi Shiwen had left behind in the Buzhou Mountain couldn't kill the Purple Eye Emperor. It was destroyed by the law of destruction. However, even though he had killed the old man, he still felt a little uneasy. It had to be said that the old man gave him an extremely dangerous feeling, one that was even stronger than a medium heavenly venerate. Even though it was just a strand of his primordial spirit, it possessed a might that could look down on everything under the heavens. It was extremely terrifying. When did such a terrifying existence exist in the outer regions? Moreover, it was an old freak. This was undoubtedly where Yi Shiwen's flaw lay. He had only been cultivating for a short period of time. Moreover, he had been focusing on martial arts. Therefore, he didn't know many ancient secrets. Otherwise, he would have known the identity of this old man immediately. But no matter what, since this old man was so frightening, then the matter of the foreign forces attacking the Fortune Divine Dynasty would not be resolved so easily. However, there was no other way now. He could only wait for Yi Shiwen and the medium heavenly venerate to return. Now that he thought about it, the Fortune Divine Dynasty's army should have already received the news. Originally, in Yi Shiwen's opinion, the foreign allied forces were simply courting death. No matter how brave they were, no matter how much territory they conquered, it was useless. When the Fortune Divine Dynasty's army returned, it would be the time of their death. No matter how strong they were, they couldn't stop the sneak attack of the Fortune Divine Dynasty's army with the Fortune Universe map. In recent years, the Fortune Divine Dynasty had been able to maintain its stability because of the existence of the Fortune Universe scroll. However, now that Yi Shiwen thought about it again, He was afraid that everything was not so simple. The old man's strength was so terrifying. Since he dared to lead the army to attack the Fortune Divine dynasty, then he must have a trump card and means. It would not be so easy for the Fortune Divine dynasty to quell the chaos this time. The real chaos was coming. Yi Shiwen sighed. He didn't know whether such a chaotic world was a good thing or a bad thing for him. Only in a chaotic world could heroes rise from the wilderness. Dragons and snakes would rise from the land for a while, and all of them would come into being. What gave him an even bigger headache was that both the Silvermoon clan and the Heavenly Tao sect avoided fighting and conserved their strength, especially the Heavenly Tao sect. Even with a celestial master overseeing the sect, they could only hole up in their sect and not come out. And they seemed to have formed a tacit understanding with the foreign allied forces. As long as Heavenly Sect didn't take the initiative to attack, the foreign allied forces would not bite this hard bone. Under such circumstances, the human race who took the initiative to stand out would inevitably become the target of public criticism. They would become the main target of the foreign allied forces. However, this was something they had to do. If they couldn't organize the allied forces with the strength of the human race, they would be annihilated in minutes. It was just that the foreign allied forces would suffer more losses. Time waited for no man. At this point, there weren't many choices left for him. He could only fight. Even if he died in battle, he couldn't drag out an ignoble existence. Now he knew that his main body must be on the way back, so he could only delay the time as much as possible and wait for his main body to return. He didn't know what level his main body had cultivated to now, but it was foreseeable that he would be much stronger than when he left. He still had a hunch about this. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it was just a matter of an instant. The purple-eyed emperor was almost scared to death when he saw this scene. The spirit left by that person was actually destroyed by Yi Shiwen. At this time, he really understood the gap between him and Yi Shiwen. Almost instantly, he had already made a decision to escape frantically. He suddenly tore open the space and wanted to escape by space jump. You want to escape at this time? Don't you think it's too late? Yi Shiwen sneered slightly. His arm slashed down like a big sword. In an instant, there was an invisible wave that flew out from his arm. Tearing through the endless space, the sword Qi slashed at the Purple-Eye Emperor's body. Even though the Purple-Eye Emperor wanted to escape, it was all futile. In the face of this invisible sword Qi, the Purple-Eye Emperor was shredded into a mist of blood and his essence spirit was destroyed. Then, he was immediately grabbed by Yi Shiwen's big hand and kept together. At this time, the emperors on Mount Buzhou reacted. The purple-eyed emperor, who seemed to be unrivaled, couldn't even resist one move from Yi Shiwen. If it wasn't for the Clothes of Destruction, a celestial master-level armor, he wouldn't even be able to resist Yi Shiwen's aura. Yi Shiwen once again announced how terrifying a celestial master was with practical actions. It was just a ridiculous idea for an emperor to challenge a celestial master. Even a severely injured celestial master was far more powerful than the emperor imagined. Yi Shiwen could do it because he was Yi Shiwen. That was all. There was no other reason. Greetings, Wu Zun. At this moment, these sovereign emperors bowed one after another. Although the Yi Shiwen before them was only a sword Dao clone and not the main body, such strength was enough for them to worship. Not to mention, there was an even more powerful and terrifying Yi Shiwen behind him. Get up, Yi Shiwen said. To him, killing a purple-eyed emperor was a piece of cake. It wasn't a big deal. Your Honor, I would like to ask about the Fortune God Dynasty's army? At this time, Feng Yi couldn't help but ask. When he was in charge of the overall situation of the race, he didn't allow others to ask questions in order to stabilize the situation. Now that he saw Yi Shiwen here, how could he not ask? I haven't received any news yet, but it's not a complete annihilation. You can rest assured about this. Otherwise, how can I not know? Yi Shiwen said. Everyone, don't worry. Now, the Fortune God dynasty must have received the news and is on the way back. As long as we delay the foreign army for a while, when the reinforcements return, destroying them will be a piece of cake. Upon hearing Yi Shiwen's words, all the emperors felt relieved. Compared to them, Yi Shiwen was a celestial master, so he could obtain much more information than them. What's more, now that Yi Shiwen was here personally, even if it was only a martial avatar, it was still a genuine celestial master. This could not be fake. Now that the celestial masters of the eastern region were like tortoises hiding in their shells for various reasons, with Yi Shiwen's leadership, the human race could be like a bright light in the dark, attracting countless people. Originally, Feng Yi was the only one who issued the call. With his rallying power, he could only summon a part of them. But now, with Yi Shiwen personally issuing the call, the possibility of forming a coalition army was much higher, and the scale was much larger than the original plan, enough to resist the attack of the foreign coalition army. For a time, the emperors felt their spirits lifted. With Yi Shiwen as their backbone, they were no longer confused. For the human race, it was more like injecting a cardiac stimulant. As long as Yi Shiwen was still there was still hope for the human race. Naturally, they would not worry about anything, and the dark clouds that filled their hearts were swept away. Although no one in the human race knew when Yi Shiwen left behind this Sword Master avatar, there was no doubt that the existence of the Sword Master avatar was like a stabilizing force, stabilizing all the rumors and slanders in the human race. Yi Shiwen's appearance directly destroyed this market of rumors and slanders, and the rumor that the Fortune God dynasty's army was completely annihilated was treated as a joke. Under such circumstances, as time passed, the foreign coalition army gradually approached the land of the 11 prefectures. Chapter 3570. The news of a human martial saint personally coming forward to organize the Allied forces to fight against the foreign Allied forces quickly spread throughout the eastern region. For the eastern region, which was currently in a state of panic, this was undoubtedly a cardiac stimulant, causing many people to be less flustered. After all, there were heavenly venerables in the eastern territory. No matter how dangerous the situation was, as long as there were heavenly venerables, the eastern territory still had hope. The foreign allied forces and the Fortune God dynasty were irreconcilable enemies. Over the years, no one knew how many people had been killed by each other. Moreover, most of the people in the Fortune Divine dynasty were existences that had shivered in fear under the foreign world's creatures in the past. Many old antiques that had lived for a long time could still remember how the foreign world's creatures had bullied them. They were in a precarious situation. They could become the food of the foreign creatures at any time. They really had no power to protect themselves. Therefore, many experts of the Fortune God dynasty would rather fight to the death than surrender. But now, no one took the lead. Even if they fought to the death, it wouldn't have much impact on the foreign allied forces. Now that Yi Shiwen had taken the lead, it naturally attracted the support of countless people. Most importantly, it was rumored that the Fortune God dynasty's army on the battlefield had been annihilated by the ancient era's attack. But now, it seemed like Yi Shiwen had also returned. Then the rumor must be false. In one night, the entire Eastern Territory's anxious situation was reversed. This was the role of a heavenly venerable, like a stabilizing force. Everyone believed that after some time, when the ancient era's Fortune Divine dynasty's army returned, it would be time to launch a counterattack, especially since the foreign realm's allied forces had been too overbearing and brutal in their attacks. More often than not, clans would be uprooted one by one. Clans that were once extremely powerful and glorious were almost instantly destroyed under such attacks. At this time, the entire Fortune God dynasty was united against a common enemy. They wanted to fight to the death with these foreign creatures. Facing Yi Shiwen's sudden appearance, even the heavenly venerables of the Eastern Territory were a little confused. Everyone knew that Yi Shiwen had followed the Fortune God dynasty's army to battle the ancient era. Even if the Fortune God dynasty's army wanted to assemble and return, it shouldn't be so fast. However, the heavenly venerable's aura coming from Mount Bujo was real. It was not fake. Perhaps it was just a trace of a heavenly venerable's spirit. That kind of aura could deal with ordinary emperors, but it couldn't deceive the heavenly venerables. Suddenly, some people complained that Yi Shiwen was meddling in other people's business. Some people also felt that he was overestimating himself. The foreign creature army was coming in a threatening manner. It was not something that one or two celestial masters could deal with. Even if Yi Shiwen was tyrannical, he would be of no use in this situation. Blocking in front of the foreign allied forces now was just a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Yi Shiwen was also clear about the thoughts of these celestial masters. However, he was disdainful in his heart. These celestial masters had been cultivating for too long. Their Tao heart was covered in dust. After experiencing all kinds of setbacks, they had long lost their invincible momentum. In the face of the foreign allied forces, they would only put their own safety before matters of principle and not dare to stand out. Perhaps it was for their own safety, or perhaps it was because of other purposes. They wanted to use the hands of the foreign allied forces to help them eradicate some of the races and forces that were inconvenient for them to eradicate, clearing out a piece of territory. However, after losing the courage to move forward, everything would slow down. There was no such good thing in the world. It was impossible to protect oneself and advance by leaps and bounds in cultivation. The reason why he was able to make such a huge leap in his cultivation was because of his indomitable will. After Yi Shiwen took charge, the Human Race Coalition Conference was organized very smoothly. In front of such a celestial master, especially in front of a celestial master who had just shown his great power, there was no need to acknowledge him. In order to encourage the creatures in the East region against the foreign allied forces, Yi Shiwen did not announce to the public that he was actually just a sword Tao clone. His main body was still fighting against the ancient era on the battlefield. However, the emperors on Mount Bujo basically knew about it. They didn't know how Yi Shiwen had done it, and how much he had paid to achieve it. However, it was an indisputable fact that there were two celestial masters in the human race. This also made many people unable to look at the human race as a rising clan. In fact, this was not something that a rising clan could do. Even many old powerful races and super sects could not be compared to the current human race at this time. Moreover, the human race was currently holding the power of the world and had obtained the world's prestige. Once they defeated the allied forces from the other domains, the human race's prestige would soar to an unimaginable level. It was even possible to become the strongest clan in the East region in one step. The Silvermoon clan could be foreseen to decline and be inferior to the human race. With the development of the East region's popularity, the potential of the human race would also be incredible. Whether it was the Silvermoon clan or the heavenly Taoism, these benefits were not unknown. However, to reap all these benefits, the premise was that the human race could withstand the attack of the foreign allied forces. In terms of the thunderous momentum of the foreign allied forces, any single clan in front of this torrent would be courting death. Even if the human race organized the allied forces and their strength was much more tyrannical, compared to the foreign allied forces, they were still inferior. If they could not even resist the first wave, how could they talk about the future benefits? Yi Shiwen also knew this, but he was not willing to give up because there was already a cliff behind him. There was no way out. The so-called surrender had never appeared in his dictionary. He sat on Mount Bujo. The specific matters of the alliance were handled by the Fengyi clan. He did not need to worry, nor did he need to intervene. Yi Shiwen opened the heavenly eye and placed his mind into the heavenly Taoism. He saw that on the vast and boundless continent of the entire East region, a real disaster had descended. There were military disasters everywhere. Countless clans and sects with only quasi-emperors were under attack. The foreign allied forces were like locusts. Everywhere they passed, not even a blade of grass grew. One after another, the big provinces were caught in the flames of war, filling the air with smoke. This was an extremely tragic battle. It should be said that it was a massacre. Without a leader, the East region could not organize a decent counterattack. They could only be slaughtered one-sidedly. In the face of such a terrifying attack, it was impossible for any sect or clan to resist alone. Even the human race was no exception. Therefore, all Yi Shiwen could do was to delay for time. In the end, the cards he could use were too few. Although the cards in his hand were not bad, there was not much that Yi Shiwen could do in the face of the opponent's trump cards. Countless ferocious beasts transformed into their true forms and wreaked havoc in the East region. Compared to the Fortune God dynasty, there were more emperor-level creatures in the foreign domains. This was because they inherited their bloodline. Although they could only live for tens of millions of years, the advantage of this method of inheritance was that there were more emperor-level masters. Moreover, the emperor-level masters of the Fortune God dynasty could only be comprehended by oneself. There was no possibility of mass production. Even the current human race only had a few emperor-level masters, and this was the result of Yi Shiwen's wholehearted cultivation. However, there were still less than 10 people. The imperial family of the foreign domains might only be an ordinary imperial family, but they had more emperor-level masters than the human race. In front of Yi Shiwen's heavenly eye, there was no way to hide the situation. This was a huge chaotic world. If such chaos had erupted before Yi Shiwen crossed the tribulation and became a heavenly master, then Yi Shiwen could only lead a part of the human race's elites to retreat into the central region. However, there was still a chance now. The most important thing was to buy enough time for his main body to return. Moreover, chaotic world is not necessarily a bad thing. If not for such a chaotic world, how could our human race have such a great momentum? How much time would it take to develop to the top of the East region? Yi Shiwen said with a burning gaze. For the human race, this chaotic world was an extremely disastrous test, but it was also a rare opportunity. If the human race could withstand it, there would be a rebirth of development, which was equivalent to the effect of ascending to the heavens. Moreover, such a great prestige would also become a huge help when the main body became an Eastern Heavenly Master. If the main body successfully became an Eastern Heavenly Master, then there would be too many benefits in the future. Many local races would be indebted to the human race for saving their lives. It was only a matter of time before Yi Shiwen successfully pacified the East region. The foreign allied army is now sweeping the periphery, and they are encircling our human race little by little. Yi Shiwen saw all of this. The foreign allied army had already planned to attack the human race. However, the human race was not an ordinary sect or clan after all. It was a super strong race that occupied the land of 11 provinces. It was also one of the few in the entire East region. Although the foreign allied army came menacingly during this time and seemed invincible, in fact, they were picking the soft persimmons to pinch. The real strong races and sects avoided them as much as possible, and completed the sweeping and plundering in the shortest time. When the strong races and sects of the East region were protecting themselves, the foreign allied army also tacitly avoided them. However, now the human race stood up for the East region, leading a wave of resistance. At this time, the foreign allied army could no longer ignore the situation of the human race. Since the foreign allied army is looking for trouble with our human race, then I will strike first. Yi Shiwen sneered. Chapter 3571. Now that he had thought of it, he would do as he said. He suddenly opened his eyes. Then, an endless crack in the space was torn open with his body as the center. An incomparably long passageway was created, and went straight to the depths of the void. This was a sign that Yi Shiwen had pushed the laws of space to the extreme. Although this was a sword avatar, it did not mean that he knew nothing about the laws of space. That was simply impossible. The comprehension of the laws of space and time was the basic accomplishment of a heavenly master. Even if he was an avatar condensed from Sword Avatar, these were still basic abilities. In just an instant, the end of the passageway appeared. It was a place in the eastern region, where a sect's encampment was located. At this moment, the sect had been completely surrounded by the Outer Region Alliance army. Up and down, there were foreign allied forces everywhere. All kinds of huge ferocious beasts flew in the void one after another, constantly breaking the sect's enchantment. This sect was also considered very powerful. God-level experts were as numerous as rain, and divine kings and quasi-emperors were constantly emerging in order to resist the attack of the foreign allied forces. However, it was useless. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. They were beaten back again and again. Even so, the experts of these sects didn't retreat because they had nowhere else to retreat. Behind them was their sects, and also where their loved ones were. One expert after another was blown up in the air, turning into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. Some were from this sect, and some were from the foreign allied forces, but most of them were from this sect. The absolute advantage of the foreign allied forces was completely displayed at this moment. There were as many experts as there were clouds, and there were dozens of quasi-emperor level ferocious beasts. They surrounded the entire sect from top to bottom. What was more terrifying was that behind these ferocious beasts, there was an incomparably huge ferocious beast crawling in the depths of the void. It had an ancient aura on its body, and it was an emperor-level life form. At this moment, its huge eyes were wide open, staring fixedly at the living beings in this sect. He was just waiting for the barrier and formation of this sect to be completely destroyed, and the tens of millions of living beings in this sect to be completely absorbed, turning them into blood and flesh, becoming his own power. His eyes shone with a terrifyingly fierce light. It had been a long time since he had fought so happily. Although no one in the outer domain cared about him and he could fight as he pleased, in reality, he couldn't just go around killing without a care. This was especially true for sovereign emperors and extreme-grade experts like him. If he was not careful, he could provoke other emperor-level experts from the foreign domains. Experts of the same level could pose a fatal threat to him. Therefore, the ones who were truly reckless were the juniors, and the old ancestors were merely existences to suppress them. Thus, it was very rare for them to fight as they pleased. But at this time, he suddenly felt a sense of extreme danger, a feeling of impending disaster suddenly emerged. Extreme powerhouses like them often had a very strong premonition. Having such a premonition almost meant that a terrible existence was eyeing him. He got up abruptly and looked in all directions. That heart-palpitating feeling was getting more and more serious. All of a sudden, a huge hand descended from the sky, grabbing at him from the distant void. Celestial Master! This fierce beast had just roared, but it was already too late. It was grabbed by a big hand and then suddenly grabbed it. This emperor-level fierce beast exploded on the spot, bursting out an extremely mournful scream. He never expected that the one who attacked him would be a Celestial Master. It should be known that although Celestial Masters and Emperors were both extreme powerhouses, they were not on the same level at all. This fierce beast's essence and blood were crushed by Yi Shiwen, and then slowly wriggled in the air, and then turned into a human figure. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? After grabbing this fierce beast's spirit, he integrated a wisp of his own spirit into it, and turned into an Emperor-level expert. Although it was only for a short time, it was enough. However, this figure turned his palm, and a long sword appeared in his hand, and then suddenly slashed down. Bang! In an instant, countless foreign allied forces were chopped up, and turned into a blood mist that filled the sky. This sword had already destroyed hundreds of thousands of troops. One could imagine how ferocious this sword was. At this time, the foreign allied forces had yet to react. Weren't they the ones who had the upper hand earlier? How did the situation change completely in such a short time? They hadn't reacted yet, and hundreds of thousands of troops had been beheaded. After a breath's time, hundreds of thousands of troops had been beheaded again. At this time, they finally reacted. The figure in front of them was their biggest enemy, especially those quasi-emperors. They roared and rushed over to kill Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had actually beheaded their emperor-level old ancestor. This was simply a disaster for their small clan. For the foreign allied forces, the difference between having an emperor-level old ancestor was simply like the difference between ice and fire, heaven and hell. At this time, they all went crazy and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. However, how could Yi Shiwen let them succeed? He unceasingly slashed out shocking sword energy and easily beheaded them. No matter what kind of experts rushed over, they couldn't resist this sword energy. In just a moment, these foreign allied forces' fierce beasts had all been beheaded by Yi Shiwen's sword. They were not Yi Shiwen's opponents at all. Although they only had the strength of Emperor level, which was incomparable to Heavenly Master level, but for those quasi-emperors and god-kings who had not reached the extreme realm, it was almost a disaster. They were almost easily beheaded, and they didn't have any power to fight back at all. For a time, rivers of blood flowed everywhere, and this army was quickly beheaded by Yi Shiwen's incarnation. Then, Yi Shiwen's divine thoughts disappeared, and his body turned into a pool of blood and fell down. Everyone in this sect was dumbfounded. They were originally prepared to die in battle, but they didn't expect that things would turn around in the end. Not only were they safe, but they were also rescued. On the contrary, the foreign allied forces that besieged them were completely annihilated. This feeling was really too dramatic. Who is this? Everyone asked. How could they not express their gratitude after being rescued by such a powerful expert? This is Wu Zun. I have seen his portrait, it is indeed him. At this time, someone in the sect shouted, obviously recognizing Yi Shiwen. He is really our savior. Yes, when this matter is over, I will go on a pilgrimage to Mount Buzhou on foot. Even if I can't see the old man, it will be good to kowtow at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 3572. For a time, the entire sect was filled with gratitude for Yi Shiwen. No one would ever understand the despair in the face of death until the moment of real death. Because of this, Yi Shiwen, who gave them a new life, made them worship him so much. Otherwise, ordinary emperor lords and heavenly masters would at most make them feel fear, but not so grateful. This was just a matter of convenience for Yi Shiwen. In fact, it depended on his mood who he would save first and who he would save later. After all, his heart was like a boulder. He wasn't a bloodthirsty person. However, the deaths and injuries of millions of people weren't enough to move him, let alone the other sects and clans that he had no relations with. However, for them, this was a life-saving grace. The situation was completely different. The foreign creature army here had been slaughtered in a short period of time, and the crisis had been resolved. However, to the entire foreign allied army, this was just a corner of the land. Even if the entire army was wiped out and the war was lost, it wouldn't matter much. Yi Shiwen also knew this. Therefore, after slaughtering the army here, he immediately turned to another place. He used the great magic power of a heavenly master, and directly displayed the method of crossing time and space. He directly tore a space channel, and on the other side of the channel there was an extremely hot battlefield. This was a powerful tribe, and there was an emperor lord presiding over it. Therefore, it could be said that they were very awe-inspiring on ordinary days, and could get wind and rain whenever they wanted. However, at this time, facing the attack of the foreign allied forces, they had no power to fight back because the foreign allied forces were stronger than them. There were already more than 3 top emperor-level creatures that had appeared. Therefore, the emperor lord in this clan could only bitterly hold on and opened a barrier to resist, but he did not dare to casually go out of the ancestral land to attack. Otherwise, he would be attacked by 3 emperor-level creatures. They could only watch these foreign allied forces carry out endless killings in their ancestral land. Blood flowed like a river, and corpses piled up like a mountain. Such losses had not occurred for many years. However, they did not even have the power to resist at all. They were not a match at all. Damn it, damn it, damn it! He had never felt so powerless before. But now, he truly felt how weak he was. Although he was an extreme expert, he was completely powerless in the face of such a huge change. He was not a match for them at all. He could even see through the layers of formations and boundaries that surrounded the ancestral land. He could also see the huge bodies of the 3 emperor-level creatures surrounding the ancestral land, as well as their extremely violent eyes. It was as if the entire world should die in those indifferent eyes. He wondered just how much killing they had gone through to be able to come to Yang City. He wasn't afraid to face any one of them, but the other party had completely put on a look of who wants to fight you one-on-one, leaving him with no choice but to fight to the death. In the past, he had also led troops to attack the outer realm. Was this retribution? Even an extreme powerhouse like him, who had broken free from the river of fate and never believed in fate, still felt this way at this moment. This was not even a race war. Whether it was a race war within the Fortune Divine Dynasty or the Outer Realm, even a life-and-death battle was nothing compared to this scene. He had already begun to consider the possibility of escaping. For him, he was the true core of this race. As long as he was still alive, his race would not be destroyed. But if he died, then even if the race was not destroyed, it would be no different from being exterminated. He was not willing to give up this race unless it was absolutely necessary. He was like a guardian god protecting this race, but from another perspective, the destiny of the race also protected his path of cultivation. Not to mention, it provided him with a huge amount of cultivation wealth at every moment. More than half of it was obtained by him. It could be said that it was a mutually beneficial situation. For example, Yi Shiwen could be said to be purely invested in the human race. It would take a very long time to achieve a balance of income and gain huge benefits from the human race. In the end, the heritage of the human race was still too shallow. It was okay to support an emperor, but to support a heavenly master was not something that ordinary sects and clans could do. However, Yi Shiwen was an anomaly. Originally, the human race should have developed normally and become strong enough. Then, an emperor and a heavenly master would naturally appear. But Yi Shiwen did not abide by this rule at all. He appeared in front of the world, as if he had jumped 3 levels and forcibly brought the human race to that step. However, he was also very clear that the 3 emperor-level existences were only watching and did not make a move. Their goal was him. The moment he made a move, he would immediately be surrounded and then killed. Although he was an emperor-level emperor, the other 3 were also emperor-level existences. Whatever he knew, they also knew. In this regard, he had no advantage at all. No, if this goes on, I will only be forced to death step by step. When that time comes, I won't even have the qualifications to fight to the death. The Emperor suddenly stood up and prepared to fight with these 3 foreign emperor-level existences. At this point, there was nothing he could not do. Suddenly, just as he was about to risk it all, a burst of terrifying spiritual power came from the sky. Then, the sky violently fluctuated like the surface of water. Then, a spatial passage appeared in the sky. Hiss, who is it? The Emperor Lord leaped to his feet. The Fortune Divine Dynasty was incomparably vast, and any province was several times bigger than an ordinary world. It was already amazing for an Emperor Lord to be able to form a giant hand from a province and grab another province. This giant hand had grabbed from the depths of the distant void. It was unknown how many provinces it was separated by. This kind of power and terrifying fluctuations, who else could it be other than a heavenly master? Only a heavenly master could have the power to grab from one end of a big domain to the other. Although the 3 Emperor-class lifeforms were tyrannical and cruel, none of them were fools. They immediately recognized that this was something only a heavenly venerate could do. Some celestial venerables made their move. They immediately turned around and fled. But how could they escape from the celestial venerable's big hands? They were immediately grabbed by Yi Shiwen and turned into a rain of blood. Then, they condensed into several figures that looked exactly like Yi Shiwen. These people brandished their swords and killed their way into the foreign creature's army. With a casual slash, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were annihilated. The speed of the slaughter was simply too fast. In the blink of an eye, all of them had been slaughtered. The Emperor was almost scared silly by the sudden change in front of him, but he still looked at the appearance of the people in front of him and immediately recognized Yi Shiwen. There were not many heavenly masters in the eastern region. In particular, the famous ones who appeared in front of everyone could be counted with one hand. Among them, Yi Shiwen was undoubtedly the most in the limelight recently. Therefore, he quickly recognized Yi Shiwen. He immediately felt guilty in his heart. He didn't go when Yi Shiwen wanted to convene the alliance. That was because his position was close to heavenly Taoism. So, he was closer to heavenly Taoism. Moreover, the origin of his studies was indeed somewhat related to heavenly Taoism. However, at this point, heavenly Taoism did not help. Instead, Yi Shiwen, who was far away, helped them. How could this not make him sigh with emotion? However, after this experience, he decided that he must organize an allied army. Without the protection of the allied army, a force like theirs would be almost vulnerable when facing the allied army of the outer realm. They would only be defeated one by one. Thank you, Your Honor, for saving my life. After this matter is over, I will personally go to Mount Buzhou to pay my respects to Your Honor to thank you for saving my life. If there is anything in the future, I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. The Emperor quickly said. It was not only because he was grateful, but also because he could see from this matter that heavenly Taoism was not reliable at all. Usually, they were very diligent in collecting his offerings. However, when it came to life and death, they could not be relied on. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen did not even have any contact with him. Yet, Yi Shiwen helped him out of righteousness. This had already given him an answer. Well, be on guard. Now is not the time to relax. Yi Shiwen just nodded, and then the body formed by the blood rain directly dispersed. After saving another place, Yi Shiwen began to move on to the next place without stopping. His eyes illuminated thousands of miles. The entire eastern region from top to bottom, except for some special places, was in his eyes. It just so happened that he could continue to save more people. It would also increase the strength of his alliance. It would also increase the reputation of the human race and himself. Yi Shiwen brazenly attacked with the body of a heavenly master. One could imagine how fast this speed was. Often, a foreign alliance army was besieging a force of the Fortune God dynasty. However, in a short period of time, they were all slaughtered. Not even one returned. In a short period of time, more than a dozen foreign alliance armies were slaughtered by Yi Shiwen. Among them, more than 20 foreign emperors were slaughtered. Although these emperor-level creatures could rely on the power of their bloodline to advance to the emperor realm, it would take millions of years for them to grow. Now they were beheaded in an instant. The loss was not small. However, this was a blow from another level, beyond the limit that the emperors could resist. And this abnormal situation soon alarmed the foreign alliance army. They suddenly flew into a rage. Although they did not react at first, there were also heavenly master-level experts in the foreign regions. The situation of Yi Shiwen's continuous attacks was quickly discovered. For a time, the entire Foreign Alliance army was boiling with anger. Chapter 3573. In particular, many Emperor Realm experts were so angry that they flipped the table. Yi Shiwen's actions were against the rules, and he directly attacked. According to the tacit understanding between these heavenly masters would not casually attack an ordinary army because the combat power of an heavenly master was too terrifying. When both sides had heavenly masters, they would often restrain themselves. Just like nuclear weapons, when both sides had nuclear weapons, they could maintain peace. This was also the reason why the foreign domains and the Fortune God dynasty could maintain a general peace in recent years. Because with the terrifying strength of both sides, as long as it wasn't an heavenly master expert, even peak Emperor realm experts like the Battle Emperor and Night Emperor couldn't cause any fatal impact on the overall situation of both sides. No matter how powerful an Emperor realm expert was, they could still be overwhelmed to death. But heavenly masters were different. It was impossible for an Emperor realm expert to overwhelm a heavenly master unless they were heavenly master experts of the same level. Because of this, both sides wouldn't attack easily. Although there were heavenly masters in the Foreign Domain Coalition army, the number of times they attacked was quite limited because they were maintaining the most fundamental balance. They couldn't attack at will because once they did, some Eastern Domain heavenly masters who maintained a tacit understanding with them wouldn't just stand by and watch. Although those heavenly masters had a tacit understanding with them to not attack each other, they definitely wouldn't watch the Foreign Domain Coalition army enter the Fortune God dynasty. That was contrary to their fundamental interests. They maintained a tacit understanding with each other to protect themselves, and they also wanted to borrow the strength of the Foreign Domain Coalition army to eradicate some people that they couldn't easily eradicate. Although the Heavenly Tao sect leader and the others didn't seem to do anything, at the very least, they held up the heavenly masters in the Foreign Domain Coalition army so that they couldn't attack easily. But Yi Shiwen's appearance suddenly broke the balance between both sides. Facing such a guy who didn't follow the rules at all, they were also angry. It wasn't that Yi Shiwen didn't understand the tacit understanding between them, but who cared? Since they were already forced to this point, who would care about the rules? Because the human race was different from other races. They had heavenly masters, which meant that the Foreign Domain Coalition army didn't need to follow the rules and could send heavenly masters. In other words, no matter what, the situation of the human race facing the Foreign Domain Coalition army and heavenly masters would not change. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen would have to be crazy to talk about rules with them. This is too much. Kill the martial sovereign. Gather our men and head straight to Mount Buzhou. We'll make this idiot pay the price. It wasn't just the Emperor monarchs who were enraged. The heavenly venerables of the other domains were also enraged. There were many Emperor-level life forms in their allied forces, but no matter how many they had, they couldn't allow themselves to be slaughtered like this. At this time, at the foot of Mount Buzhou, many sovereign emperors who saw this scene almost had their eyes popped out. Yi Shiwen did not hide his attack from them. It could even be said that he did it to deter them and let them contribute to the alliance with peace of mind. They could clearly see that Yi Shiwen had easily caught an incomparably powerful emperor-level creature in a certain big province of the eastern region. Then, he had used it to exterminate the army that they had brought with them. They had never dreamt of such a method. Although they knew that there was a big gap between a heavenly venerate and an emperor lord, they had never thought that the gap would be this big. A casual strike from an emperor lord could often kill an emperor lord. There were even outstanding peak emperor lords among the emperor lords. But in fact, they were killed after resisting for a while. This is the legendary heavenly venerate. At this time, the emperor lords said in horror. They had the urge to kneel on the ground and worship. Yi Shiwen was so powerful that it was really terrifying. However, they didn't know that although Yi Shiwen was only a sword avatar of the second realm, the means that he could use were far more powerful than the ordinary second realm. After all, with his main body, many insights would also affect him. He could even use his main body's understanding of the heavenly way. Although he had just entered the second realm, he had consolidated his realm almost immediately. It was only natural that he was at the peak of the second realm. Yi Shiwen did it to deter them. He also wanted them to understand that the alliance was very reliable and that they shouldn't play tricks. This was also a helpless move. The so-called trend was irresistible. However, at this time, the trend was with the allied forces of the other domains. If he commanded such an army, he wouldn't need to say any nonsense. He could directly crush whoever he didn't like. The wealth of the emperor-level creatures that Yi Shiwen killed also fell into Yi Shiwen's hands, and then was distributed to the human race emperors in the 11 provinces. As for the other emperor lords who came to the alliance meeting, they were not so lucky. They could only watch. Yi Shiwen was not a good person to this extent. These wealth were indeed useless to him, but it was not wasted. Therefore, the emperor lords in the 11 provinces made a huge fortune. They were eager for Yi Shiwen to attack a few more times. Yi Shiwen could obtain unimaginable wealth with just a casual attack. However, Yi Shiwen only knew that this was already impossible because he had already sensed that several heavenly venerate divine senses swept on Mount Buzhou. As long as he opened the space channel again, those heavenly venerates would rush over immediately. These divine senses were both surveillance and a warning to him not to act rashly. Otherwise, they would not be polite. Yi Shiwen sneered. He knew the plan of the allied forces of the other domains. They didn't intend to fight head-on at all. Instead, they wanted to build up the momentum and overturn the human race instantly. What he had to do was to delay as much as possible the time when the allied forces of the other domains launched the final general attack, so as to buy time for his main body to return. He could already faintly feel the existence of his main body. It was only a matter of time before his main body returned. He must be on the way now. I have no other choice but to fight. If I'm forced into a corner, I'll have no choice but to give up my cultivation. Compared to that, it's more important to protect the foundation of the human race and preserve the vitality of the Eastern domain. Yi Shiwen had already decided that if he was forced into a corner, he could only self-destruct. Even if he died in battle, he must delay their footstep. The human race was his foundation, and he could not afford to lose it. The Eastern region was his future foundation. If he suffered heavy losses now, his forces would eventually be weakened, and he would be the one who suffered losses. That was why he had the mind to save so many sects and clans that he had never seen before and didn't know at all. Those were his future deployments. He was determined to obtain the position of the Eastern Heavenly Lord. At this time, he deeply hated those old Heavenly Lords for being wise and protecting themselves. At this time, they still dared to play this trick. If they had stood up in time, the allied forces of the other domains would not have fallen to this point. He was even forced to fight with all his strength, and even prepare to die in battle. Suddenly, at this time, Yi Shiwen saw an incomparably huge palace in the sky of the eastern region. This palace was high up in the sky, overlooking the entire land of the eastern region. The entire palace was extremely luxurious. The walls of the palace were actually formed by the crystal wall of the space. It was a dazzling sight everywhere. That was the Eastern Heavenly Lord Palace, and also the central governing place of the entire eastern region. At this time, an incomparably huge crack appeared on the Eastern Heavenly Lord Palace. Countless troops poured out and attacked the Eastern Heavenly Lord Palace. In this army there were divine kings, quasi-emperors, and emperors. However, the most conspicuous among them were 2 men and 1 woman. They had extremely terrifying surging auras. It's the Heavenly Lords. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized these 2 men and 1 woman. One of them was a middle-aged man who was about 40 years old. The other one was a handsome and fair-skinned teenager. The woman was dressed in red. She looked like a young woman who was about 20 years old. Although these 3 people were in human form, they had unimaginable monstrous auras. They were foreign life forms. However, what made Yi Shiwen feel strange was that these foreign lifeforms did not come from the eastern region's stormy sea region, but from the southern region's infinite wasteland. It was a foreign domain similar to the stormy sea region. The living environment was extremely harsh, and there was violent spiritual energy everywhere. Ordinary gods would be torn to pieces if they approached it. It used to be a place that foreign lifeforms were unwilling to set foot in. However, ever since the rise of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, a portion of the foreign world's creatures were driven there, taking root and living there for generations. Therefore, this portion of foreign world's creatures had the heaven wasteland's aura. Ordinary people naturally wouldn't be able to see it, but Huang Xiaolong could. In his eyes, there were not many secrets of the heavenly Tao, let alone this kind of aura. Yi Shiwen frowned. After the foreign allied forces were mobilized, they were naturally divided into battle zones. Now, these foreign emperors and foreign armies had rushed here. This was a classic example of crossing the line. The three foreign heavenly venerables spoke directly. If the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Residence surrenders now, you will not die. If you do not surrender, you will die. However, no one in the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Residence wavered. Those who could guard the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Residence were undoubtedly the most trusted subordinates of the Middle Heavenly Venerate. They were also diehard loyalists of the Fortune God dynasty. How could they surrender just because of a few words? On the contrary, the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Residence had left behind many means. Although there were no Heavenly Venerates, the fierce counterattacks that they launched were no less than those of a Heavenly Venerate. Many of them were left behind by the Middle Heavenly Venerate, and even some by the previous Eastern Heavenly Venerate. The depth of their heritage was simply unimaginable. In an instant, the war between the two sides broke out. Chapter 3574. The Eastern Heavenly Venerate Residence had many layers of defenses and various means. From the outside, it looked like a palace complex. However, in reality, it was like a military fortress. Without a Heavenly Venerate, no matter how many sovereign emperors there were, they wouldn't be able to kill it. Even the crystal walls surrounding the East Empyrean residence couldn't be broken through. It was precisely because of these crystal walls that the East Empyrean residence was isolated in another space. Although it could be seen with the naked eye, it wasn't actually in the fortune world. This was a very impressive method. Although it was not as good as the God of Creation, which was built by the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch, it had been reinforced by countless experts over the years, and had reached an unimaginable level. Even if an Empyrean attacked with all their strength, they might not be able to break through. If there was an Empyrean overseeing it, then even if there were 10 times more Empyreans, they still wouldn't be able to break through. This was the power of the Eastern Empyrean Residence's defenses. Yi Shiwen also wanted to make Mount Buzhou of the human race to this level. Unfortunately, it was too difficult. Even a heavenly master like him couldn't accomplish it in a short time. The heavenly venerables of Tianhuang region's outer domain had rushed over to attack, because there were no heavenly venerables present. They wanted to breach the Eastern Heavenly Sovereign Residence and plunder the boundless wealth within. The Eastern Empyrean Residence had been the center of governance for generations of Eastern Empyreans. The wealth it contained was simply unimaginable. Once it was taken away, the entire eastern region would suffer a great blow. Seeing this scene, Yi Shiwen snorted coldly and said in a loud voice, "Are you people going to watch these people besiege the Eastern deity residence and not come out? This is a slap in the face." Yi Shiwen's voice transformed into the laws of the great Tao and penetrated deep into the heavenly Tao. Only those celestial venerables could hear his words. This was the highest form of communication. Only those Empyreans could hear it. He wanted to let those Empyreans who were cowards hear it. The heavenly venerables of Infinite Wasteland were not only slapping the eastern region's face, but also slapping their faces. Even the allied forces of the Tempest Sea region wouldn't dare attack Eastern Heavenly Venerate residents at this time because of its special status. Humph! A few cold snorts came from the void. They were obviously infuriated by Yi Shiwen's words. However, they still didn't intend to attack. The world is really in chaos. Even the people of Infinite Wasteland dare to come here to take advantage of us. You can watch and do nothing, but I can't. This place will be my temporary residence in the future. How can I allow you to act so arrogantly here? As Yi Shiwen spoke, he suddenly grabbed the void with his big hand, and a huge space passage was ripped open by him. Then, Yi Shiwen's figure turned into a flash of golden light, and instantly arrived near the Eastern Deity residence. The three Outer Domain Heavenly Venerates who were besieging the Eastern Heavenly Venerate residence immediately noticed it. An Empyrean of the Eastern region? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Shiwen and seemed a little puzzled. He thought that all the celestial masters of the Eastern region should have been restrained by the Stormy Sea region. Who are you? The middle-aged man reacted quickly. I don't care who you are, it's not too late for you to surrender now. This time, the Fortune Divine Dynasty won't be able to escape annihilation, but as long as you are willing to surrender, we are willing to give you the treatment that an Empyrean deserves. A Celestial Master-level master was a superior person wherever he went. Naturally, they also wanted to rope in Yi Shiwen. Surrender? I think you are the ones courting death. Yi Shiwen sneered. How dare a mere second realm heavenly venerate like you yell at us? You really don't want to live. At this time, the woman in red sneered. Her cultivation was at the 5th realm, and she was extremely powerful. She was much stronger than the current Yi Shiwen. Apart from her, the middle-aged man also had a cultivation base of the 4th realm. The young man had the highest cultivation base, a full 6th realm cultivation base. He was only a step away from becoming a high-level 7th realm heavenly venerate. Why are you talking nonsense with him? Just capture him. If he is sensible and is willing to surrender, then give him a chance to be a slave. If he is unwilling, then kill him directly, the young man said decisively. Among these three, his status was obviously the highest. To be able to make such a decision, the weight of a heavenly venerate seemed to be nothing in his heart. He didn't care about it at all. Moreover, the other two were obviously following his lead, which further highlighted the extraordinariness of this young man. I just want to know where you come from. How dare you be so arrogant? Yi Shiwen said. Even if there are so many heavenly venerates in the Stormy Sea region, none of them would dare to attack the Eastern Heavenly Venerate mansion. How dare you? My name is Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerate. I am destined to be the master of the entire world, the young man said coldly. Blood-robed Heavenly Venerate, Infinite Wasteland Barbarian Venerate, what are you two waiting for? Kill him and take out the Heavenly Venerate source. I will ask the old man to refine his Heavenly Venerate source into an elixir so that we can consume it and improve our cultivation greatly. Hearing this young man's words, the other two Heavenly Venerates' expressions suddenly changed. Especially when the young man mentioned the old man, it made them feel cold all over. They didn't dare to disobey. The master of the entire world? How arrogant! Yi Shiwen said. Even the 4 Heavenly Venerates of the East, South, West, and Middle Heavenly Venerates didn't dare to say that they were the master of the entire world. Since ancient times, only the fated Heaven Lord had dared to call himself the master of the entire world. The Heavenly Venerates were extremely arrogant existences. Unless they were as tyrannical as the fated Heaven Lord, no one could convince the masses. If an ordinary person dared to call himself that, he would simply be courting death. You don't need to know whether I have such an ability or not, because you are about to die. The young man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't intend to take action personally. In his opinion, a heavenly venerate of the 2nd realm wasn't qualified for him to take action personally. Hurry up and do it. At the young man's command, the woman in red suddenly moved. In an instant, the entire world turned into a sea of blood, as if this place had become a sea of blood. The endless sea of blood directly swept towards Yi Shiwen. Within this sea of blood, one figure after another appeared. All of them were peerless masters who could casually blast out a peerless unique skill. They surrounded Yi Shiwen and almost killed him in an instant. "Break!" Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. His words were followed by the law. The bloody people in front of him exploded in an instant and fell into the sea of blood. It seemed as if they had been killed by an invisible sword. Wherever his gaze landed, those bloody people would explode one after another. His gaze could also kill and destroy the world. He had truly cultivated the way of the sword to an unimaginable level, fusing it into every part of his body. Even so, more and more blood people still flew over. There was no end to them, because the blood-robed heavenly venerate behind these blood people was endless. That terrifying strength firmly suppressed Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen's original body was here, she wouldn't have been able to withstand a single blow. However, the suppression of the sword venerate avatar was enough. Yi Shiwen wasn't unaware of the gap between the two sides. Moreover, the blood-robed heavenly venerate wasn't the strongest. There was still the ancient chaos heavenly venerate, a sixth realm heavenly venerate, eyeing him covetously. Therefore, he didn't hesitate almost immediately. He took a step forward and turned into a sword. The sword light split the waves and pierced through the sea of blood in an instant. The blood-robed heavenly venerate was only guarding against Yi Shiwen's escape. He didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would actually fly in his direction. In an instant, Yi Shiwen surpassed him. At this time, although the blood-robed heavenly venerate and infinite wasteland barbarian venerate reacted, it was too late. Even the ancient chaos heavenly venerate didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would directly penetrate the inescapable net laid by the three of them and fly directly into the eastern heavenly venerate mansion. "Damn it!" The ancient chaos heavenly venerate suddenly roared. "You two useless trash! You actually let him escape!" He even ran into the eastern heavenly venerate mansion. Even with his degree of arrogance, he knew how difficult it was to deal with the eastern heavenly venerate mansion. It was possible to capture the eastern heavenly venerate mansion without a heavenly venerate to oversee it. However, if there was a heavenly venerate to oversee it, then the difficulty of capturing the eastern heavenly venerate mansion would be more than 10 times greater. In fact, it might not even be possible to capture it. How could he not be angry at this time? The blood-robed heavenly venerate and infinite wasteland barbarian venerate were also furious. They had been tricked by Yi Shiwen. For these two arrogant heavenly venerates, it was tantamount to a slap in the face. How could they tolerate this? Find out who this guy is. How dare he stand in my way? Find out who his tribe is. Find out where his sect is. I want his sect to be exterminated. The ancient chaos heavenly venerate roared. Such an unexpected failure had made his anger burn to the extreme. I don't believe that he can still sit still when I am exterminating his tribe in front of him. His temperament was also extremely ruthless. He would exterminate people's sects at every turn. After suffering some losses in front of Yi Shiwen, he wanted to completely uproot the human clan. At this time, Yi Shiwen directly entered the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion. This was the first time he had come to the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion. When he was still an emperor, his status was ordinary. He was not an emperor within the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion. Naturally, he was not qualified to come here. After becoming a Heavenly Venerate, he also could not come here due to many coincidences. However, everyone in the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion was no stranger to him. He was an important general under the command of the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Now that the Eastern Heavenly Venerate had been promoted to the Middle Heavenly Venerate, Yi Shiwen would also be a popular candidate for the next Eastern Heavenly Venerate. He was also one of the 2 candidates recommended by the Middle Heavenly Venerate. Naturally, they did not dare to neglect him. Originally, they were a little flustered when facing the attack of the 3 Heavenly Venerates. Although the defense of the Eastern Heavenly Venerate mansion was tyrannical, since the other party dared to come, they were most likely prepared. How could they not be flustered? However, now that Yi Shiwen was in charge, they were much safer. Chapter 3575. As soon as Yi Shiwen entered, a Peak Emperor Lord came to greet him. He was a powerful Emperor Lord who was as famous as the Battle Emperor, Scarlet Emperor. "Greetings, Martial Lord." Scarlet Emperor stepped forward and greeted respectfully. Currently, he was in charge of the defense of the Eastern Celestial Residence. He was different from the Battle Dharch. The Battle Dharch was a veteran emperor who had followed the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord to battle in the past, while the Scarlet Dharch was a veteran who had been personally brought up by the current Middle Heavenly Lord. Hence, he was left in the Eastern Celestial Residence to manage the affairs of the Eastern Celestial Residence. He also had a high status in the residence, second only to the Middle Heavenly Lord and the others. "Get up. The war is urgent now. It's not the time to be polite." Yi Shiwen waved his hand gently. Scarlet Emperor felt a strong force lifting him up. He was still puzzled. Didn't Yi Shiwen follow the Middle Heavenly Master to the battlefield? Why is he here now? "Your Honor, has the Fortune God Dynasty army returned?" Scarlet Emperor asked. "Not yet, but it should be soon. I won't hide it from you now. I'm just an avatar, not my real body," Yi Shiwen said. Scarlet Emperor was slightly disappointed by Yi Shiwen's reply. If the Fortune God Dynasty's army had returned, then they wouldn't have to worry anymore. But it was just an avatar of Yi Shiwen. The danger was greatly increased. Even so, he didn't dare to show it in front of Yi Shiwen. "If my real body was here, dealing with these people would be as easy as lifting a finger." Yi Shiwen sighed and said, "If I could, I wouldn't have rushed out like this. But those old guys aren't willing to show up, so I have to do it." Speaking up to here, the Scarlet Emperor's face was also extremely ugly. When the Eastern region was attacked by the foreign domains, apart from reporting to the Middle Heavenly Venerate, he also asked for help from the various Heavenly Venerate. However, it was useless. The replies he received were that they were either busy or couldn't spare the time. Especially since many of them were people that the Middle Heavenly Master paid a great price to rescue from the Fortune God path. Now, they didn't care about the situation in the Eastern region. The Eastern Deity Residence was aware of the situation in the Eastern region. But without the leadership of a great Heavenly Master, they didn't dare to act rashly. Otherwise they would die. Those people are short-sighted and refuse to help. They will regret it in the future," said the Scarlet Emperor. Although he was angry, he didn't dare to speak arrogantly. Those celestial masters might not be able to do anything to Yi Shiwen, but they still had a way to deal with him. If an Empyrean had the intention, they would be able to scheme against him sooner or later until he died. "All right, give me all the defensive formations and tricks of the entire Eastern Supremacy Mansion. Leave this place to me. This time, I'll make sure that they return empty-handed," said Yi Shiwen. "Here." If it was someone else, he would naturally not hand over the defense of the Eastern Heavenly Sovereign Residence so easily. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He had a close relationship with the Middle Heavenly Venerables, so he was naturally trustworthy. The Scarlet Emperor waved his hand. Suddenly, a huge amount of information poured into Yi Shiwen's mind. The information contained in it was an endless sea of knowledge. Even the books in 100 libraries couldn't describe this information. If it was anyone else, they would have become an idiot. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He instantly absorbed this information and quickly transformed it. He also understood the key to controlling the defense of the entire Eastern Supremacy Mansion. There were many defensive methods that the Eastern Supremacy Mansion hadn't used yet. This was because these were methods that only heavenly masters could use. Emperors couldn't do anything about it. "Humph, I'll kill you this time," said Yi Shiwen coldly. He had heard the words of the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master just now. A strong killing intent had already erupted in his heart. At this time, outside, the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master was listening to the information that the foreign armies had gathered. Although the infinite wasteland wasn't connected to the eastern region, it didn't mean that there was no intelligence in the eastern region. Moreover, it wasn't difficult to recognize Yi Shiwen. He was recognized very quickly. Good. What a great martial venerable. I'll make his human clan die without a burial place. The ancient Chaos Heavenly Master laughed loudly. His eyes were full of violence. "Go, follow me. Bring an army. I'll personally capture all the human clan and kill them in front of him," said the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master. "I haven't suffered such a big loss. I must make him die in pain." You'll die first today." As soon as he finished speaking, a loud roar came from the Eastern Supremacy residence. A man wearing an iron robe that was shining with golden light flew out. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? Good. You've come out. I'll kill you first, then I'll destroy your clan." The ancient Chaos Heavenly Master laughed loudly. His eyes were full of malice and coldness. At this time, there was no need for him to give any orders. The barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland directly rushed over. It was a great shame for him that Yi Shiwen had escaped from under his nose. "You've come at the right time." Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. His big hand grabbed towards the void and a sword appeared. This sword slashed towards the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland with unimaginable power. "Die!" The barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland roared. He immediately evolved a world of Infinite Wasteland, and then fiercely suppressed Yi Shiwen. Using the power of a world to suppress someone, no matter how strong he would still die. This move was his unique skill, and he had used it right from the start. One could only imagine how angry he was. Boom! The long sword slashed into the world of Infinite Wasteland. However, it was fundamentally different from what they thought before. The long sword was not crushed by the world of Infinite Wasteland. On the contrary, the long sword cut the entire world of Infinite Wasteland in half. The terrifying sword chi raged and tore the world of Infinite Wasteland in half. After slashing the world, Yi Shiwen's long sword did not lose its momentum. It fell towards the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland. Impossible! How could this be? The barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland was completely in disbelief. He could not believe that his full force attack was so easily broken. However, his reaction was considered fast. He blasted out a punch, and the laws all over the sky condensed and turned into a storm of laws. It formed a terrifying fist energy and went towards Yi Shiwen's long sword. Clang! An explosive sound like the collision of gold and iron shook the entire eastern region. Then, the arm of the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland suddenly exploded, and he was also sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. He was seriously injured. All of this seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it only happened in an instant. In an instant, the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland was blasted away before everyone could react. He was seriously injured, and the mouthful of blood he spat out was unknown as to how many tens of thousands of years of cultivation he had spat out. Not only the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland, but even the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master and the blood-robed Heavenly Master looked at Yi Shiwen in disbelief. They had seen Yi Shiwen's cultivation before. He was only a Heavenly Master of the Second Realm. His strength was indeed very strong for ordinary emperors and quasi-emperors, but it was nothing for them. Under normal circumstances, Yi Shiwen should be the one fleeing in panic under the hands of the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland. It would be good if he could protect himself. However, Yi Shiwen did not only look like he could protect himself, but even the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland could not resist a single move from him. "That's the armor on his body is unusual." Primordial Chaos Heavenly Venerate reacted immediately after getting over his initial confusion. Everything was because of the golden light radiating from Yi Shiwen's body. It was precisely that armor that had allowed Yi Shiwen's strength to increase so much all of a sudden. "What the hell is that?" The blood-robed Heavenly Master was also stunned. He had seen Tao tools and treasures that could increase the strength of a Heavenly Master, but he had never seen anything that could increase the strength of a Heavenly Master to such an extent. It was simply too exaggerated. The gap between every realm between Heavenly Masters was huge. It was already very exaggerated to increase the combat power of a Heavenly Master by one level. It was simply ridiculous to increase the strength of a Heavenly Master from the second realm to the point where he could instantly kill the barbarian venerable of Infinite Wasteland. Yi Shiwen floated in the air, and also felt the bursting energy in his body. This was one of the trump cards of the Eastern Heavenly Master Residence, the Energy Treasure Garment. The power of this treasure garment could be seen from the blow just now. It had increased his strength to the limit. Even a Heavenly Master who had just reached the second realm could feel that his pure strength was comparable to a high-level Heavenly Master of the seventh realm. The strength of this increase was simply unbelievable. However, this was not perfect. Unless one was a Heavenly Master, ordinary people would not be able to withstand the power of this treasure garment wreaking havoc in their bodies. Even a Heavenly Master could not mobilize the power of this treasure garment for a long time. Secondly, every strike of the treasured robe consumed an astronomical amount of energy. Even the human race, which was a new and powerful race, couldn't afford to fight for a long time. Perhaps only the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Manor could afford such a consumption. Because of this treasure garment could not be too far away from the Eastern Heavenly Master residence. Otherwise, its energy would be exhausted and it would vanish into nothingness. Therefore, this treasure garment was actually a treasure for defense. It could only be used within a certain range. However, for the current Yi Shiwen, it was enough. "I'll let you see the trump card of the Eastern Heavenly Master residence. Are you ready?" Yi Shiwen stared at the three of them with bright eyes. Chapter 3576. The aura on Yi Shiwen's body surged crazily, like a monstrous tide. It also seemed as if there was endless energy falling like a waterfall, converging into a vast ocean. A small half of the eastern region could feel a huge force erupting from the extreme of the world. Many creatures trembled in the face of this terrible force. It was like the eternal legendary God, the only God of creation who dominated everything. At the same time, many divine thoughts were projected from all directions. This terrible and violent force had alarmed them. A celestial master was very terrifying. However, only a high-level celestial master of the seventh realm or above could be able to alarm a big region to such an extent. In the face of this terrible force, the ancient celestial master and the other two celestial masters' faces turned solemn, especially the ancient celestial master. He was the only one among the three who had fought with Yi Shiwen. Although it was only for a moment, he was defeated. However, it could also be seen how terrifying Yi Shiwen was now. After a while, the injuries on his body finally recovered, and his arm grew back. Just a moment ago, that one blow had caused serious damage to him. It could be said that he had spurted out at least 100,000 years of bitter cultivation. It was simply terrifying. Yi Shiwen had mastered that pure and violent power very well. It seemed as if he was born to walk on this path. This force is very strong, right? However, there is not much time left. Let's speed up and kill you. Yi Shiwen grinned slightly. You are too arrogant, said the ancient celestial master. Do you think you can kill the three of us by yourself? In the end, you are just relying on this energy treasure. However, the borrowed power is only borrowed power. It is impossible for you to be our opponent. Let's see if I am your opponent. Before Yi Shiwen's voice faded, the ancient celestial master took the lead to launch a surprise attack. The endless sea of blood drowned everything, submerging the entire world, and turned into a terrible attack. However, these attacks couldn't even get close to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't even move. He just relied on the terrifying energy waves emitted by the energy-treasured clothes to evaporate the sea of blood. The area within a radius of a kilometer around Yi Shiwen was like a restricted area. Then I'll start with you first. Yi Shiwen let out a long roar and instantly set out. Like a long sword, he directly swept out. In an instant, the sea of blood turned into nothingness, and a huge crack appeared in the sky. This terrifying strike caused the heavens to collapse. If this happened in the starry sky, countless stars would be turned to dust, and even a river of stars would be destroyed. This was how terrifying an Empyrean was. At this time, Yi Shiwen's body revealed an extremely dangerous aura, and the endless sword principle suddenly erupted. Unlike the ever-changing attack methods of the main body, this sword principle avatar only had one fighting method. One sword to break all techniques. But to him, this was enough. To him, the sword was everything, and everything could be a sword. Therefore, to him, the sword Dao was his strongest attack. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen's figure disappeared instantly, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the bloody-robed heavenly master. At this time, Yi Shiwen had disappeared, as if he had integrated with heaven and earth. The swordsmanship was him, and his body had turned into a big sword. It directly broke all things in the world. The power of Yi Shiwen's sword was too great, and it was completely on the road of breaking all techniques with one force. It was unparalleled, and this was also the way he was best at. The bloody-robed heavenly master's eyes suddenly widened. He never expected that Yi Shiwen's sword momentum could be raised to such a terrifying realm. The sword grew longer and bigger, and in just an instant it fell, as if the sword had turned into everything, turned into a world of swordsmanship, and then fell. The bloody-robed heavenly master's body turned into a bloody world, and countless creatures in the sea of blood rushed to fly up, trying to resist this sword. These creatures were very strong, but under the sword light of this sword, they looked so ridiculous. Boom! There was a crazy loud noise, and the sword light broke the bloody world, falling on the bloody-robed heavenly master. Ah! The bloody-robed heavenly master screamed, and his whole body turned into a sky of blood rain under this sword, collapsing and dispersing. Among them, the remaining heavenly master's spirit wanted to escape into the distance. A sword light brewed at Yi Shiwen's fingertips, as if a world was being born and destroyed. Swish! The sword light shot out, and directly pierced the spirit of the bloody-robed heavenly master. This, the ancient chaos heavenly master's eyes widened, and he still couldn't believe it. Although the bloody-robed heavenly master's strength was not as good as his, he was also in existence in the fifth realm. In terms of strength, he was second only to the ancient chaos heavenly master, but he was completely vulnerable in front of Yi Shiwen. Although he clearly knew that Yi Shiwen had used the energy treasure clothing instead of his own strength, the degree of increase in strength was too exaggerated. On the other hand, the barbarian venerable of heaven's wasteland next to him was not surprised. He already understood that Yi Shiwen had seriously injured him with just one sword move, but Yi Shiwen had killed the bloody-robed heavenly master so easily, and even they didn't have time to react, which still shocked him. It was not just the ancient chaos heavenly master and the barbarian venerable of heaven's wasteland. In fact, all the heavenly masters who were watching this battle were a little confused. Yi Shiwen, who was merely in the second realm, could actually improve his strength to this point after obtaining that energy treasure clothing. It was simply incredible, but with their eyesight, they could naturally see that this energy treasure clothing required too much energy. It required a special formation in the Eastern Heavenly Lord Mansion to continuously supply energy. Every minute and every second consumed a huge amount of wealth. Not to mention this, the key was that it couldn't be too far from the Eastern Heavenly Lord Mansion. Otherwise, this energy treasure clothing would be simply heaven-defying. However, they noticed that the surface of Yi Shiwen's body had begun to crack. The body of a celestial master was the strongest in this world. But, even his body had begun to crack. One could well imagine what kind of dreadful erosion he was enduring. Not long after the fight began, Yi Shiwen had only used a few moves, and he was already in such a state. One could imagine how serious the aftereffects of this energy treasure clothing were. But even so, Yi Shiwen's performance was really amazing. The ancient Chaos Heavenly Master also quickly discovered that the surface of Yi Shiwen's body had begun to crack. He immediately understood what was going on. Yi Shiwen, who seemed invincible, actually had a fatal flaw. He could stall for time, but Yi Shiwen couldn't. As long as the time was up, the seemingly invincible Yi Shiwen would also be defeated. After understanding this, the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master was undoubtedly a lot more relaxed. However, Yi Shiwen didn't launch an attack immediately. Instead, he used his hands to tear open a space channel. On the other side of the space channel was the army that had been dispatched by ancient Chaos Heavenly Senior to exterminate the human race. More than 20 Emperor-level lifeforms led the way, and aggressively swept towards the human race. Everywhere they passed fell into the flames of war. Yi Shiwen was expressionless. Using his finger as a sword aura splashed out and swept out, directly sweeping into this army. Boom! This sword aura blasted into the army, and immediately, a mushroom cloud slowly rose up. This mushroom cloud grew wildly at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a moment, this army was completely swallowed, instantly turning into nothingness. A powerful army led by more than 20 Emperor-level lifeforms couldn't even resist a single blow from the current Yi Shiwen. This was the power of a Heavenly Master. Moreover, the Sword Dao Heavenly Master was unparalleled among all Heavenly Masters in terms of attack. This was also why only a Heavenly Master had the ability to protect themselves like a nuclear weapon. Unless the other side also had a Heavenly Master, otherwise, no matter what kind of army they had, they wouldn't be a match at all. The ancient Chaos Heavenly Master suddenly widened his eyes. Those were the elites of the elites he had sent, but now they had been turned into nothingness under Yi Shiwen's attack. The anger in his heart could be imagined. What's the hurry? It will be your turn soon. Yi Shiwen grinned and said, as if he didn't care at all. He didn't even care about the cracked skin on his body. This energy was constantly wreaking havoc in his body. He himself was also using martial power to heal his injuries, but now he couldn't maintain the balance anymore. The energy was wreaking havoc more and more, and finally, this situation occurred. So there wasn't much time left for him. As he spoke, Yi Shiwen moved, but he didn't attack the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master immediately. Instead, he instantly rushed to the front of the Heaven Wasteland Barbarian Venerable, wanting to cut off the ancient Chaos Heavenly Master's wings. The Heaven Wasteland Barbarian Venerable also instantly understood Yi Shiwen's intention. He was shocked and angry. Yi Shiwen was picking a pushover, and he, a dignified Heavenly Master, had become a pushover in the eyes of others. How could he not be angry? But whether he was angry or not, it was useless. Yi Shiwen's terrifying attack had already arrived. Having experienced it just now, he didn't dare to resist at all. He retreated 1,000 miles with each step, wanting to get out of the range of the Eastern Heavenly Lord residence so that Yi Shiwen couldn't use the energy-treasured clothing to wreak havoc. But Yi Shiwen's speed was faster than his, and he directly blocked in front of him. Yi Shiwen stood still, and then a long sword appeared in his hand. The sword light soared into the sky, swept over 100,000 miles, and directly slashed down on the Heaven Wasteland barbarian Venerable. Seeing that he couldn't escape, the Heaven Wasteland barbarian Venerable repeatedly evolved worlds in an attempt to resist, but they collapsed in an instant. Poochie! The Heaven Wasteland barbarian Venerable was slashed by the sword, and even his physical body and primordial spirit were destroyed in one blow. After the powerful sword light killed the Heaven Wasteland barbarian Venerable, it turned into a graceful swan and scattered into the universe. Rumble! The whole world was trembling under this attack. In this trembling, Yi Shiwen was like the only true god in the world, standing tall in the world. Chapter 3577. Yi Shiwen had killed 2 celestial masters in a row. His combat power had obviously shocked everyone. There was a difference in strength between the celestial masters, and there might even be some disparity. However, killing the bloody-robed celestial master and infinite wasteland barbarian lord as easily as eating and drinking water still shocked everyone. In addition to the increase in power from the energy treasure clothing, was Yi Shiwen's swordsmanship really so terrifying? The cracks on Yi Shiwen's body had deepened a bit after he had killed Venerable Barbarian of Heaven Wasteland with a single blow. Many of the cracks had even merged together. He looked like a ceramic man, which was extremely terrifying. Yi Shiwen took a few deep breaths and forcibly repaired some of them. His gaze turned to Ancient Chaos Heavenly Master. Originally, there were 3 Heavenly Masters this time, but now he was the only one left. And he was also the most terrifying one among them. He was at the peak of the 6th realm, a supermaster who could step into the 7th realm at any time. Wu Zun, you're already an arrow at the end of its flight at this point. Why do you have to force yourself? Ancient Chaos Heavenly Master said. He wanted to delay time because he had already seen that the more he delayed, the more unfavorable the situation would be for Yi Shiwen. For Yi Shiwen, a quick battle was the way to go. For him, delaying time was the only way to avoid facing Yi Shiwen, who was currently in full swing. It's enough to kill you! Yi Shiwen roared, and the aura of his body erupted. It was even more terrifying than before, and it swept into an endless storm that was released above the entire sky. At this time, Ancient Chaos Heavenly Master also released his full aura. It was the release of a real Heavenly Master. His law aura could only be described as chaotic. It was simply a mess, but it was this mess that contained a terrifying power. There was order in the chaos, and this was where the chill of Ancient Chaos Heavenly Master came from. Both of their auras had sublimated many times. In this case, Yi Shiwen did not wait for Ancient Chaos Heavenly Master to make a move. Instead, he took the initiative to make the first move. The world seemed to be destroyed. Heaven and earth, time, space, everything turned into nothingness. Yi Shiwen instantly attacked mercilessly. Billions of rays of brilliance erupted, and the entire world was filled with sword aura. It instantly turned into a terrifying torrent of swordsmanship, and slashed down towards Ancient Chaos Heavenly Master. Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable wasn't to be outdone in the face of Yi Shiwen's eruption. He also erupted. Countless chaotic principles flew out and transformed into a huge and mighty azure dragon. Its huge body coiled in the sky. It was almost 1/3 the size of a big province. It was extremely huge. The azure dragon faced the long river of swords and was not afraid at all. Boom! The attacks from both sides collided, and a terrifying light filled the sky above the eastern domain. All living creatures could sense the terrifying impact of the collision, and it sent chills down their spines. The azure dragon battle sword seemed to have fallen into an eternal standstill for a moment. However, Yi Shiwen's long sword finally burst into a brilliant brilliance and slashed the azure dragon into pieces. Then, it bombarded Ancient Tianzuan's body. Bang! Ancient Tianzuan was blasted away in an instant. Blood splattered all over his body. He had been seriously injured by the sword just now. Compared to the blood-robed heavenly venerable and infinite wasteland barbarian venerable, he was much better off. At least he wouldn't have been killed by the sword. This was enough to show how powerful he was. Yi Shiwen, who had slashed out with the sword, wasn't much better off. Blood began to ooze from the surface of his skin. This sword had mobilized endless energy for him, and at the same time, it had also caused great damage to his body. However, in the next moment, the blood oozing from his body evaporated completely. Ancient Tianzuan was dazed by this sword, but he also saw the situation on Yi Shiwen's body. He suddenly burst into laughter. "Martial Venerable, it seems that your situation isn't good either." Ancient Tianzuan laughed, and blood splashed from time to time. "That's enough." Yi Shiwen's expression was still indifferent. He just looked at Ancient Tianzuan coldly, and his eyes were full of killing intent. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen moved again. He was like a tyrannosaurus, rampaging in the sky. In an instant, he rushed to Ancient Tianzuan and slashed down with the sword again. He didn't care that the wounds on his body opened up again, and blood splattered out. Bang! Ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord was once again sent flying. In front of Yi Shiwen's sword, the power of the previous sword had yet to dissipate. It collided with Ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord again, and he was sent flying like a meteor on the spot. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen had already appeared on the path where Ancient Tianzuan was blasted away. Then, another indifferent sword slashed down, and he was blasted back the way he came. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen was like an indifferent and ruthless machine. He constantly bombarded the Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable with every sword strike. The Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable's body was constantly surging with new vitality. In an instant, he swallowed a medicinal pill. Every time he suffered a serious injury, he would quickly recover. If it weren't for this, he would have died in less than 2 strikes. But even so, Ancient Tianzuan's current situation was extremely miserable. Yi Shiwen's sword slashed down continuously, and his body exploded several times. At this time, Yi Shiwen's situation was not much better. His body was covered in blood, as if he had fallen into a sea of blood. At this time, many Tianzuan couldn't help but be a little speechless when they saw this battle. In their hearts, Yi Shiwen was classified as extremely dangerous. If it were them, after putting on the treasured energy clothes, it would be enough to drive Ancient Tianzuan away. It was impossible to pay such a high price to fight him. Such a battle looked good, but in fact, it was also a huge injury to the body. After this battle, it was unknown how long it would take for him to recover to his peak state. If it was just to buy time, then it was too much. Therefore, many people treated Yi Shiwen as a madman to deal with. But they didn't know that Ancient Tianzuan's threat had already put him on Yi Shiwen's kill list. Now that the human race had no top experts to hold down the fort, if Ancient Tianzuan escaped and retaliated against the human race, the consequences would be simply unimaginable. Therefore, in order to prevent future troubles, it was best to kill both of them. Moreover, the Outer Domain and the Fortune God dynasty had already shed all pretense of cordiality. What else did he have to worry about? Boom! Yi Shiwen's sword had pierced through Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerate. The eruption of power had annihilated space-time. The entire battle was now under Yi Shiwen's control. His current pure power was comparable to that of a 7th realm expert. Although it was still quite lacking compared to a true 7th realm expert, he could still completely suppress a peak 6th realm existence like Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerate. Ancient Tianzuan roared, and his entire body was sent flying. A large hole appeared in his chest, which was caused by Yi Shiwen's sword. Blood blossomed in the sky like a burst of fireworks. The entire world was trembling, and the endless stars were vibrating. Yi Shiwen didn't have any magical means or magical powers. It was all pure brute force. He transformed the huge energy in his body into a terrifying sword aura and slashed out. It was such a simple move, but ancient Tianzuan couldn't do anything about it. His ferocious appearance even made many Tianzuan ask themselves if they were in his shoes. It wasn't that ancient Tianzuan was too weak, but that Yi Shiwen was too strong. In the end, such a terrifying scene was formed. The simpler the attack, the more violent and powerful it seemed. Was ancient Tianzuan going to die in front of everyone like this? Was he going to die in Yi Shiwen's hands like blood-robed Tianzuan and Heaven Wasteland Venerable? Yi Shiwen had just become a Tianzuan less than 10,000 years ago, but the combat power he displayed and the battle record of killing Tianzuan was simply too dazzling. Finally, the endless life force in ancient Tianzuan's body also disappeared. It should be said that it was exhausted. Yi Shiwen's sword light was too terrifying. His sword light slashed down again and again, destroying all the vitality of ancient Tianzuan. Even swallowing immortal elixirs was useless. Finally, at the last moment, Yi Shiwen's sword struck the ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord. The ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord fiercely fell on the ground of the eastern region, setting off a monstrous wave of dust. The ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord couldn't even maintain his floating state. Everyone could even see from his severely injured body that his spirit had been ignited by Yi Shiwen's sword light. His spirit was burning. Ancient Tianzuan could be said to have suffered heavy losses in this battle. Although he was arrogant and despotic just now, he was ruthlessly slapped by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen would rather suffer serious injuries and spend countless years to recuperate. But he still wanted to kill him. Everyone looked at ancient Tianzuan with sympathy. Encountering someone like Yi Shiwen, he had to die even if he didn't want to. Yi Shiwen floated in the sky. His whole body was densely covered with cracks. He was also on the verge of collapse. "One last blow, I'll finish you off," Yi Shiwen roared, and the long sword in his hand burst into a horrifying radiance. The ancient Chaos Celestial Master revealed a frightened expression for the first time. However, it was very difficult for him to move at this time. He had suffered a serious injury. "Wu Zun, show mercy!" Suddenly, a voice came from afar. Yi Shiwen heard the voice and immediately knew who this person was. However, it was absolutely impossible for him to let go at this time. He had to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Boom! The sword light fell, and ancient Tianzuan screamed and was killed on the spot. Chapter 3578. When Yi Shiwen killed ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord and took away his flesh and blood, the owner of the voice appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. It was none other than the Pan-Tian Emperor, whom he had not seen for a long time. The experience of being chased by the Pan-Tian Emperor and almost being killed was unforgettable. He was lucky to be able to escape that time. There were so many Emperor Lords at that time, but not many could escape. If one didn't truly reach that level, they wouldn't be able to understand how terrifying a Celestial Lord was. Even though Celestial Lord Pan-Tian had weakened to the extent that he had been imprisoned for countless years and wasn't at his peak, it wasn't difficult for him to kill Celestial Lord. He could kill an Emperor Lord with one hand. Therefore, Yi Shiwen had a deep impression of the Pan-Tian Emperor's voice. When he heard the Pan-Tian Emperor's voice just now, he had already recognized him. "You dared to kill him!" The Pan-Tian Emperor's expression was indifferent, and his voice contained unimaginable killing intent. "So what if I killed him? What's so strange about it?" Yi Shiwen sneered. "With the current relationship between us, do I have a reason not to kill him? It's fine if you kill others, but you dared to kill ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord. You are in big trouble. The price will be paid with the annihilation of your human race." Coiling Sky Venerable looked at Yi Shiwen with an extremely complicated expression. There was killing intent in his eyes, but there was also a bit of amazement in his eyes. The ant who could only flee in panic under his hands in the past had now grown to such an extent. It had only been a little more than 10,000 years, and he was able to cultivate from the Emperor realm to the Heavenly Lord realm. Annihilation of the human race? Yi Shiwen's eyes flickered with killing intent. You don't have to scare me like this. I'm not scared. I hate it when people use the human race to threaten me. Ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord deserves to die, and he must die because he used the human race to threaten me. The Pantheon Emperor's pupils shrank slightly. He probably did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so sensitive about this matter. Perhaps Ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord might not die originally, but after touching Yi Shiwen's reverse scale, he had to die. It was that simple. I also find it strange. It's reasonable to say that you should be the most angry ones since they have crossed the boundary. You didn't even come out to help before. Why are you coming out to save them now? Yi Shiwen said. When the foreign lands' allied forces invaded the Fortune Divine Dynasty, they could plunder a lot of wealth and resources. Because of the huge benefits involved, it was a taboo to do anything that crossed the boundary. Therefore, when Yi Shiwen had killed the blood-clothed Heavenly Master and the barbarian Venerable of Heaven Wasteland, none of the Heavenly Masters of the Stormy Sea region had intervened to stop them. The Celestial Masters of the Stormy Sea region were also eager to borrow Yi Shiwen's hand to kill these guys. It was obviously different when it came to the Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable. Pantheon had personally intervened. It was obvious that the identity of this Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable wasn't ordinary. However, he still felt a little strange. Generally, the Celestial Masters were the ultimate backers of a force. It seemed that there was someone qualified to be the backer of a Celestial Master like the Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable. This was extremely rare. However, Yi Shiwen didn't regret killing them. Even if he had known about it in advance, he wouldn't have been lenient. If he didn't pull out the roots when cutting weeds, they would grow again when the spring wind blows. He knew that this was especially true now that both sides were hostile to each other. The war between the Fortune God Dynasty and the foreign domains was in full swing. Killing one more Heavenly Venerable would mean losing a portion of the foreign domain's vitality. Celestial Masters weren't so easy to produce. Only one could be produced in tens of thousands of years. Losing one was losing one, and it was difficult to replace them. Moreover, he had killed 3 in one go. It doesn't matter if the others die, but you shouldn't have killed him, Pantheon said indifferently. As for why he didn't save the Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable in time, it was because he didn't expect Yi Shiwen's combat power to be so fierce. Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerable, who was only one step away from the high-level Celestial Master realm, was killed by Yi Shiwen. I'd like to know what will happen if I kill them, Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Although that lord will inevitably be furious if you kill him, I'm sure he will be appeased with your head. Pantheon Venerate could not help but feel his hair stand on end when he thought of that lord. He had once ruled the Stormy Sea region. In terms of status and strength, he was not inferior to the current 4 great Empyreans of the North, South, East, and West. Even though he had been severely injured and suppressed, he was still a proud and arrogant person. Even the original Eastern Empyrean, who had now inherited the position of Middle Empyrean, had looked down on him. It could even be said that the two of them were old rivals. This was because the Eastern region had to face the Stormy Sea region, and the two of them had fought many times. Therefore, he wouldn't even care about a Middle Heavenly Venerate. However, that existence was completely different. Even to this day, he couldn't forget that feeling. There's actually someone you're afraid of. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but feel somewhat curious. It could be said that Pantheon wasn't afraid of anything, but there was actually someone whom he was afraid of. There are some things that a junior like you can't understand. Pantheon didn't care. According to his status and strength, saying that he was afraid of someone was undoubtedly a kind of humiliation to him. However, this time, Pantheon didn't feel the slightest bit like that. Because that person was indeed terrifying. Wu Zun, you don't have to say any more nonsense. I know that you want to delay for time to recover. I'm not saying all this for you to hear. I'm saying all this for that person to hear. I've already tried my best. Therefore, I can only take your head in exchange for your life," said Pan Tian 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 Tian. "Don't think that you can be my opponent just because you're wearing that treasured energy robe. That's impossible. Your strength is too low. Not only have you entered the Heavenly Master Realm in more than 10,000 years, but you've also entered the Second Realm. This is already not bad. You may have the hope of reaching the top in a few million years. Unfortunately, your hope will be cut off now." Coiling Sky's supremacy had his own confidence. After all, he was someone who had reached the peak before. His opponents were only the great supremacies of the north, south, east, and west. There was only one reason why he remembered Yi Shiwen. It was because Yi Shiwen was the only person who had escaped from his hands. Back then, there were many sovereign emperors who had escaped. However, after he caught up to them, they still managed to escape. But that was all. You should have stopped when I asked you to. In the end, you forced me to make a move," Pan Tian Tian Venerate said coldly. "Originally, I wanted to pretend for a few more years, but now it seems that there's no other way. There are already people who can't sleep and eat in peace because of my recovery. Since you've forced me to this point, you can only step on a path of no return." Boom! The Pantheon Sky Paragon made his move. That berserk aura burst forth like a vast ocean, drowning everything. It was even more majestic and terrifying than the aura that Yi Shiwen had unleashed with all his might. In that instant the sky was shattered. It took only a moment for the Pantheon Tian Venerate to arrive in front of Yi Shiwen. His palm slammed down and heaven and earth collapsed. This palm was too terrifying. The sword lights that Yi Shiwen had unleashed earlier were child's play compared to this palm. This palm simply surpassed the limit. The eyes of the Pantheon Tian Venerate had a disdainful might. It was indeed the arrogance and strength that a top expert should have. Bang! This palm directly landed on Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen let out a muffled groan, and his entire body was sent flying. His body almost exploded. Dense cracks also appeared on the treasured energy clothes on his body. It looked extremely terrifying from afar. Puff! Yi Shiwen spat out a mouthful of blood. The Pantheon Tian Venerate's speed was too fast. He had already utilized the speed law to the limit. Even with Yi Shiwen's speed, it was difficult for him to keep up with the Pantheon Tian Venerate. Yi Shiwen's body reconstructed. The recovery ability of a celestial venerate was amazing. However, because of this treasured energy clothes, most of the magic power in his body had to be used to recover. Originally, when he was dealing with ancient chaos celestial venerate, it was naturally successful. However, when he was facing an expert like the Pantheon Tian Venerate, it seemed to be a huge burden. However, he couldn't abandon this treasured energy clothes. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would be defeated even faster. Just by relying on his cultivation of the second realm, he wasn't on the same level as the Pantheon Tian Venerate, who had clearly stepped into the peak of the seventh realm. There was a difference of 5 major realms. He would almost die in one blow. Over the past 10,000 years, the Pantheon Tian Venerate had concentrated on his cultivation. From his extremely weak state at the beginning, he had recovered all the way to the peak of the seventh realm. From this, it could be seen how serious his injuries were back then. Even a celestial venerate couldn't recover in an instant. His foundation had been damaged. Therefore, Yi Shiwen could only forcefully use this treasured energy clothes to resist the Pantheon Tian Venerate and stall for time. Bang! The Pantheon Tian Venerate attacked again in an instant. He blasted in front of Yi Shiwen, surpassing the speed of light. Even the timeline had been blasted out. It was completely chaotic. His figure couldn't be seen at all as he blasted in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was once again sent flying. This time, half of his body had burst open, and blood was spurting everywhere. So strong, as expected of the existence that once dominated the stormy sea area. Yi Shiwen said loudly. There was a smile on his face. You can still smile? The Pantheon Venerate said indifferently. Coupled with his serious injuries and the terrifying burden brought by the treasured energy clothes, Yi Shiwen definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the next attack. Yi Shiwen had already been seriously injured previously. Why can't I smile? Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. Do you think that I'm already in a desperate situation? Isn't that the case? You can't even withstand the next attack. This time you'll really die, said the Pantheon Venerate. Impossible. Yi Shiwen hadn't finished speaking when a clear voice came from afar. Because I'm back. Chapter 3579. Just as this voice fell, a figure instantly appeared in front of everyone. When this figure stood still, everyone discovered that this person was actually Yi Shiwen. Everyone was stunned when they saw the two Yi Ziwans standing side by side in the sky. What the hell was going on? However, they quickly reacted because it wasn't difficult to guess that the previous Yi Shiwen was just an avatar. However, everyone was even more shocked. A martial arts avatar of Yi Shiwen actually possessed such strength. It was simply incredible. There were many celestial masters who had martial arts avatars because there were always places that needed them when they weren't around. However, there were only a few who could produce martial arts avatars that were also at the celestial master level. This was because it was too difficult. Even if an ordinary avatar could possess the combat power of a celestial master level for a short period of time, it was often a one-time consumable. After a single battle, it would completely vanish into thin air. A martial arts avatar with an independent cultivation path like this was extremely difficult. This was because in order for a martial arts avatar to be able to cultivate independently, a massive amount of precious resources had to be consumed to refine a physical body. In addition, a portion of one's own path had to be extracted for the martial arts avatar. This was a path that was completely different from the current path. This was because every extreme powerhouse's path was different. No one could cultivate to the same extreme realm as others. However, this wasn't a problem for Yi Shiwen. Among his 3,000 martial paths, there were many paths that were also sufficient for him to cultivate to the celestial master level. It was just that he usually walked these paths alone. Now, it wasn't difficult to separate one path. Thinking of this, many celestial masters had a higher impression of Yi Shiwen. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen had cultivated for more than 10,000 years. Even they, who had cultivated for millions of years, couldn't achieve this step. The benefits of having such an avatar were naturally very obvious. However, the difficulty was also self-evident. Coiling Sky Venerable was stunned. However, he quickly figured out why. It turned out that the one blocking them here was only a martial arts incarnation of Yi Shiwen. No wonder Yi Shiwen behaved like a madman at that time. He didn't care about the casualties at all. He didn't even care about the injuries on his body. It wasn't just what many people thought at the beginning. It was just a martial arts incarnation. Therefore, it could be sacrificed. Even at the last critical moment, it wasn't impossible to self-detonate to resist. Thank you for your hard work, Taoist friend. You can go and rest now. Yi Shiwen nodded towards Sword Sage and said. Venerated Sword nodded and said, It doesn't matter. You and I are one. This is nothing. Venerable Sword's voice had barely faded when he transformed into a mass of light and submerged into Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen turned his head to look at Coiling Sky Venerable after Sword Sage entered his body, and said, How do you want to die? When Venerated Sword Sage entered his body, Venerated Sword Sage's memories also entered his body at the same time. He immediately understood what had happened. It turned out that such a battle had taken place before. In order to resist the attack of the foreign allied forces, venerated sword almost couldn't hold on. Fortunately, he had returned in time. During this period of time, he had been working hard to rush in the direction of the Fortune God dynasty. It could be described as a non-stop horse. The real main forces hadn't returned yet. This wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. Instead, these people could return at the fastest speed possible. Yi Shiwen left Moon Empress Bian Xiaoye, the human emperor, and the Thunder Emperor in the human race army to lead the army back later. He rushed over first. From the looks of it now, the decision he made earlier wasn't wrong. If he had returned a little later, the consequences would have been unimaginable. It was fine if he had only lost a martial clone. Even though it was precious, he would still be able to create another martial clone as long as he gathered all the precious divine materials. However, after killing Venerated Sword Sage, Coiling Sky Venerable probably wouldn't let it go. He wanted to take Venerated Sword Sage Asong to see that mysterious existence. After Yi Shiwen created the martial arts incarnation, only the spirit of the mysterious old man in the armor worn by the Purple Eye Emperor saw through Yi Shiwen's martial arts incarnation at a glance. Everyone else had thought that Venerated Sword Sage was Yi Shiwen. Venerated Sword Sage's strength was also in line with everyone's initial expectations. It had been more than 10,000 years since he attained Tao. No matter how powerful he was, there was a limit. This was why no one suspected that Yi Shiwen wasn't the real Venerated Sword Sage from the beginning. If Yi Shiwen had displayed the combat power of the real Venerated Sky Venerable, it would have been unbelievable. Venerated Sky Venerable's expression was slightly dignified. It was shocking enough that Yi Shiwen's martial arts incarnation could step into the second realm after more than 10,000 years. However, the aura from Yi Shiwen's real body was stronger than that of Venerated Sword Sage's incarnation. Yi Shiwen's progress was faster than he had imagined. He had restored his original strength, so this speed was naturally very fast. However, Yi Shiwen had actually reached such a level just by cultivating. However, he soon relaxed his brows because in his opinion, no matter how strong Yi Shiwen was, it was impossible for him to surpass the limits of his imagination. In the face of Yi Shiwen's aggressiveness, Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Revered Wu, I think you are crazy. You want to kill me? So what if I kill you?" Yi Shiwen let out a loud roar. His entire body was glowing and the magic power in his body was raised. In an instant, the universe around him collapsed and was no longer stable. Yi Shiwen's aura surged and far surpassed Sword Venerable's avatar. Second realm, third realm, fourth realm, fifth realm. The aura exuding from Yi Shiwen's body seemed to have no limit. The celestial venerables who were watching the battle from afar were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. It was as if someone had grabbed their necks and they couldn't make a sound. This was the strength of Yi Shiwen's avatar. It was far more terrifying than Sword Venerable's avatar. The monstrous momentum was much more terrifying than Pan Tian Venerable, who had just displayed his divine might and beaten Yi Shiwen's avatar into a sorry state. "Didn't you just say that you want my head and destroy my human race?" Yi Shiwen's voice was clear and distant. His expression was exceptionally cold. "In the battle that year, you seriously injured me. Now it's time to settle the score. If you hadn't come, I would have needed to spend a lot of effort to kill you. I would have had to go deep into the Stormy Sea area. Maybe I would have let you go then. However, you actually dare to appear in front of me now. Then, I will kill you." Pan Tian Venerable's expression was constantly changing. The contempt in Yi Shiwen's eyes was simply not taking him seriously. This feeling was as if he had never taken Yi Shiwen's Sword Venerable's avatar seriously. Although he appreciated Yi Shiwen's strength, that was all. It was impossible for Yi Shiwen to pose a fatal threat to him. He had been famous for many years. Even middle celestial venerables would treat him seriously when they heard his name. They wouldn't dare to look down on him. However, he was being looked down upon by Yi Shiwen now. "Venerable Wu, We'll see if you can hold on. Pan-Tian Venerable suddenly attacked. This time, he attacked in anger. The laws of the universe revolved on his palm. Then, he suddenly slapped towards Yi Shiwen. Fast, fast, fast. His speed was really fast to the extreme. It surpassed the speed of light. He arrived in front of Yi Shiwen in an instant. This was the same method he had used to severely injure Sword Venerable's avatar. However, the one in front of him wasn't Sword Venerable. It was Yi Shiwen's real body. Bang! This palm fell on Yi Shiwen's body. It only set off a burst of flowing light. Yi Shiwen's body seemed to be protected by a ray of light. This shocking palm power could only set off a burst of ripples on the surface of Yi Shiwen's body. Is this all you've got? Yi Shiwen's voice was indifferent. His expression was like that of a demon. If this is all you've got, I can't protect you. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword light splashed out from his hand. It turned into a shocking treasure sword and fell towards Pan-Tian Venerable. This was also Sword Venerable's technique. It was the same technique. However, in the hands of Yi Shiwen and Sword Venerable, the power was completely different. The power of this sword shocked all the celestial venerables. Although Sword Venerable's previous attack was powerful, it wasn't enough to shock them. Such power was almost close to the level of a peak celestial venerable. Coiling Sky Venerable screamed as he was hit by Yi Shiwen's sword chi. He never expected that his attack couldn't even break Yi Shiwen's defense. Therefore, he wasn't prepared at all, and was directly hit by Yi Shiwen's sword. There was a huge crack on Pan-Tian Venerable's chest. Blood kept spurting out from it. Fortunately, he avoided the vital parts at the most critical moment. Otherwise, this sword would have killed him. His eyes flickered with a horrifying light. There was also a look of disbelief on his face. Yi Shiwen was more powerful than he had imagined. Even though he had overestimated himself, he was still seriously injured by Yi Shiwen's sword. However, he was more worried that Yi Shiwen's main body had returned. Didn't that mean that the celestial venerables of the Fortune God dynasty had also returned? If that was the case, then the consequences would be terrifying. All the glorious victories the foreign allied forces had achieved during this period of time were actually because the celestial venerables of the Fortune God dynasty weren't present. If they were present, the foreign allied forces would have smashed their heads against the iron wall of the Fortune God dynasty, even if their momentum soared to the sky. Yi Shiwen wasn't in a hurry to attack. He wasn't Sword Venerable. There was no time limit to the strength he could erupt with. He just said, "Are you worried about the others? Don't worry, there's no one else. I alone can kill you." Chapter 3580. What Yi Shiwen had said was exactly what Pan-Tian Venerable was most afraid of. It would be a real problem for him if there were a few more celestial venerables present. By the time the other heavenly venerables surrounded them, the war between the foreign lands and the Fortune God dynasty would truly erupt. Although the foreign lands' allied forces looked invincible in the previous battles, in the eyes of those who were observant, they knew that they were merely playing house, because the heavenly venerables hadn't even made a move yet. The Fortune Divine Dynasty's heavenly venerables pretended not to see anything, and the number of times the foreign domain's heavenly venerables actually attacked could be counted on one's fingers. Most of the time, the heavenly venerables under them were sent to attack the cities. Otherwise, those Fortune Divine Dynasty's heavenly venerables wouldn't be able to hide like turtles even if they wanted to. This was because doing so had already touched the bottom line of these heavenly venerables. These heavenly venerables could tolerate it now because they had their own plans. However, this did not mean that they were truly willing to let the alien lifeforms rule the creation realm again and treat them like slaves. However, Pan-Tian couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he heard Yi Shiwen say that he was alone. However, he immediately became even more furious. Yi Shiwen's appearance clearly showed that he didn't take him seriously. "Wu Zun, don't be too insolent. Coiling Sky Venerable was furious to the extreme. His entire body was glowing, and the surrounding space was distorted. In an instant, he had already disappeared from the space-time in front of him. Endless principles covered him. Yi Shiwen's sneak attack had caused him to suffer serious injuries, and he had also become vigilant. He absolutely couldn't allow such a thing to happen again. This was the means of a heavenly master. It seemed to be in front of Yi Shiwen, but in fact it had already been separated by countless spacetimes, and had protected itself tightly. Whoosh! An unimaginable fluctuation emerged in an instant. It surpassed the speed of light and time, and suddenly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. It was Pan Tian who had made his move. Yi Shiwen didn't take it seriously at all. He let out a loud shout, and the attack disappeared on the spot. He didn't wrap himself in layers of space-time cracks like Pan Tian Senior Venerable because he didn't need to. He could attack directly. His main body had already cultivated the virtuous tyrant physique. It was much stronger than the Sword Lord's avatar. Therefore, he had absolute confidence in his own physical body. After shattering Pan Tian Venerable's attack with a roar, Yi Shiwen made his move. Boundless golden light of virtue erupted from his body. It disrupted the laws in space as he launched a powerful attack. This was a simple punch, but the terrifying fist energy actually blasted out the river of time. Everyone could see that Yi Shiwen's punch had blasted into the river of time. On the spot, it passed through layers of spatial fluctuations and blasted in front of Pan Tian Venerable. Passing through layers of space didn't weaken the power of Yi Shiwen's fist energy. Instead, it became even more terrifying. After the Pan Tian Senior Venerable was protected, he didn't hold back anymore. He attacked with all his might. Many laws revolved around his body, and he used the powerful Pan Tian secret technique to resist Yi Shiwen. In an instant, his power increased by 10 times. The space around him solidified. Yi Shiwen's fist energy blasted on it, and even the space-time in the fortune world shook. However, it still couldn't break through the absolute defense of the Pan Tian Senior Venerable. Boom! Pan Tian Senior Venerable attacked again. His strength that belonged to the peak of the 7th realm truly erupted. He didn't use this strength when he was fighting against Sword Master. However, he didn't hold back now that he was dealing with Yi Shiwen. When this palm landed, it even surpassed the ordinary peak of the 7th realm. It faintly had the power to contend against the 8th realm. This was because the realm that Pan Tian Senior Venerable had comprehended far exceeded the 7th realm. At this time, he could faintly erupt with combat power that was close to surpassing the 7th realm. This was the benefit of having a profound understanding of the realm. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid at all. He just took a step forward and blasted a fist down. Competing with me in terms of physical strength? You're courting death. Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid at all. He directly blasted forward. Boom! 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 The two sides had already exchanged thousands of blows in an instant. Even many celestial masters had to open their heavenly eyes to barely catch a glimpse of the frequency. However, it was absolutely impossible to keep up with such speed. The combat power that erupted from these two people had clearly reached the high-level celestial master realm. It was really terrifying. The combat power of these two people had far exceeded everyone's expectations. Although Pan Tian Senior Venerable used to be a supreme master, he had been recuperating for more than 10,000 years because he was seriously injured. In many people's opinion, he had recovered to the 5th realm at most. This speed was already very fast. However, he had unknowingly rushed to the peak of the 7th level. According to this trend, it wouldn't be long before he would be able to step into the 9th level. This made many celestial venerates of the Tempest Sea region feel terrified. This was also why Pan Tian Senior Venerable had said before that he would truly erupt with strength. Some people were terrified because he used to rule the stormy sea region. He was the true master of the Stormy Sea region. Although he still had many loyal subordinates in the Stormy Sea region, there were more people who didn't want him to recover to his peak. Therefore, all of this was originally done in secret. If he hadn't been forced to this point by Yi Shiwen, he would never have exposed his strength at the peak of the seventh realm. That would scare a lot of people and put himself in absolute danger. Yi Shiwen was even more amazing. He had achieved the combat power of a high-level celestial master after more than 10,000 years of cultivation. Such a speed could be said to be unprecedented. Among the high-level celestial masters in both camps, which one did not reach such a realm after tens of millions or hundreds of millions of years. The celestial master realm was like ascending to the heavens. Breaking through each realm was more difficult than ascending to the heavens. Therefore, the celestial masters were also used to calculating their strength by the time of breakthrough. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen was undoubtedly just a junior. The cultivation of Sword Master's doppelganger at the second realm was already amazing to many people. However, looking at Yi Shiwen's celestial master now, it was not amazing, but horrifying. He was simply a monster. Originally, even Pantheon Senior Venerable felt that Yi Shiwen was already extremely powerful since he could spend millions of years to reach the peak. However, now it seemed that he might not even need millions of years to reach the peak. How amazing was this? The battle between the two was constantly escalating, and the combat power that erupted was more terrifying than the previous one. However, everyone fell into contemplation. The combat power of either of these two was far beyond the ordinary high-level celestial master of the seventh realm. Although Pantheon Senior Venerable was at the peak of the seventh realm, with his own foundation, he was naturally much more tyrannical than those in the same realm. It was definitely not a joke to casually defeat experts in the same realm. Even if he encountered super experts in the eighth realm, he was not afraid and could retreat unscathed. Yi Shiwen's cultivation of the sixth realm was enough to sweep away those in the seventh realm. His strength was slightly inferior to the current Pantheon Senior Venerable, but because he had cultivated the meritorious tyrant form Golden Body, his actual combat power was not inferior to Pantheon Senior Venerable. Because it was difficult for Pantheon Senior Venerable's attack to directly break Yi Shiwen's meritorious tyrant form Golden Body, Yi Shiwen could attack unscrupulously. On the contrary, Pantheon Senior Venerable did not dare to casually receive Yi Shiwen's attack, or he would be seriously injured. Under such circumstances, the two sides were actually unable to separate. The battle between the two sides soon reached the depths of the galaxy. The aftermath of two high-level Empyreans fighting was far more terrifying than an Empyrean battle from before. This was also a tacit agreement between Empyreans. Otherwise, if others came to your territory to fight, you would have no choice but to accept it. If not for this tacit rule, perhaps the entire Fortune realm would have been pierced through by these celestial masters. After countless years, it would have been riddled with holes. Rumble! Looking from the bottom of the Fortune realm, the entire Star River had been pierced through, and countless stars were extinguished in an instant. Both of them had no scruples, and had already entered the boundless depths of the Star River. There was no life here, and everywhere was deathly silent. The terrifying explosion had erupted in an instant. The fragments of the river of time, the fragments of space, and the fragments of the laws could be seen everywhere. They were torn apart by an extremely powerful force. Ha ha, this is a great fight! Yi Shiwen laughed heartily. He felt as if all the muscles and bones in his body had been released after fighting for so long. He fiercely heaved a sigh of relief. Originally, Pantheon was like the god of creation in the heavens to him. He couldn't deal with him. Especially when he had escaped from the hands of Pantheon Venerate, it had been an extremely miserable battle. In fact, it couldn't even be considered a battle, it was just an escape. And now, this resentment was viciously vented. Unlike Yi Shiwen, who was venting his anger, Pan Tian was getting more and more frightened as the battle went on. His martial power was more profound than Yi Shiwen's. However, it was very difficult for him to break through Yi Shiwen's defense. Therefore, Yi Shiwen could attack with all his strength. However, he couldn't allow Yi Shiwen's attacks to hit his hands. If this battle were to continue like this, there would be no clear victor for millions of years. He jumped out of the battle and shouted, "Revered Wu, we can't decide the winner of this battle. Why don't we just call it a day?" A bit of unwillingness flashed in the eyes of Pan Tian. He wanted to take Yi Shiwen's head to appease that person. However, it seemed impossible now. The difference in their current combat power was similar. It was difficult to determine who was superior. Even if he was unwilling, he could only give up. Is a battle that you can start and end whenever you want. Chapter 3581. Yi Shiwen withdrew his hand and looked at the Pan Tian Emperor in front of him. He couldn't help but sneer. How could it be so easy to stop when you can't beat him? He had once been chased by the Pan Tian Emperor and almost died tragically. For the Pan Tian Emperor, Yi Shiwen was just someone who had accidentally escaped from his hands. From this point of view, Yi Shiwen's desire to kill him was far greater than the Pan Tian Emperor's desire to kill him. The real reason why Yi Shiwen wanted to kill him was because the Pan Tian Emperor had threatened Yi Shiwen with the annihilation of the entire race. For them, the weight of the entire race was probably not as important as themselves. Therefore, they couldn't understand Yi Shiwen's feelings. Yi Shiwen had carried the banner of the human race since the beginning of the myriad heavens and embarked on the road to the revival of the human race. He had done it once in the myriad heavens, and this time, he would do it again. This was his Achilles heel and also his reverse scale. Anyone who threatened him with the human race would arouse his desire to kill. Protecting the human race had become Yi Shiwen's obsession. It had fused with his Tao heart and he couldn't give it up. "Wu Zun, do you want to fight to the death?" The Pan Tian Emperor looked at Yi Shiwen in shock and anger. If Yi Shiwen had said such words before, the Pan Tian Emperor would only have disdained it. But now, he didn't dare to completely ignore Yi Shiwen's words. With Yi Shiwen's strength, he was indeed qualified to fight to the death. However, he couldn't understand why Yi Shiwen wanted to fight to the death. This didn't make sense. Between heavenly venerables, life and death battles rarely broke out. This was because in the end both sides would suffer. This would only benefit the others. Even between the heavenly venerables of the outer domain and the Fortune God dynasty, there weren't many situations where life and death battles broke out. Life and death struggle? Pan Tian Emperor, you think too highly of yourself. What right do you have to fight to the death with me? Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. A fruit that emitted endless brilliance, and the aura of the law appeared in his body. Before anyone could see it clearly, he swallowed it. The moment the fruit entered his body, it instantly turned into a raging tide of energy that filled the sky and flowed into his limbs and bones. Boom! The aura on Yi Shiwen's body began to burst out, and it was much more terrifying than the peak state that Yi Shiwen had already burst out a moment ago. Yi Shiwen's strength had improved, and the only thing that could help him improve was the World Tree Fruit. The World Tree Fruit had finally matured after devouring so many heavenly masters' blood essences. Yi Shiwen's cultivation was merely at the 6th realm. In fact, he wasn't even at the peak of the 6th realm. The reason why he could fight with Pan Tian to this extent was purely because he was relying on the tyrannical strength of the virtuous gilded tyrant body. And now, his skills were finally going to explode. Who knew how many tens of thousands of years it would normally take to go from the 6th realm to the peak of the 6th realm? He crossed over in an instant. However, when he thought about how much heavenly venerate blood essence this World Tree Fruit had devoured, it wasn't surprising. In terms of the input and output ratio, it wasn't cost-effective. However, apart from the World Tree Fruit, It was difficult to find heavenly treasures in the world that could help a heavenly venerate's skills soar. The blood essence of those celestial masters certainly had other wonderful uses in Yi Shiwen's hands. However, it wasn't as practical as transforming it into strength. Yi Shiwen didn't have the world tree fruit. He didn't know how many heavenly treasures he would have to find if he wanted to refine the blood essence into pills that could enhance his martial power. Moreover, the efficiency of refining pills would be much slower than it was now. However, Yi Shiwen had always been wasteful. He was just that capricious. Outsiders didn't know what Yi Shiwen had swallowed. They only saw that his skills had skyrocketed, which was extremely shocking. What did he swallow? What heavenly treasures! Many heavenly venerates revealed greedy looks in their eyes. It should be known that the cultivation of a heavenly venerate was extremely difficult. They didn't know how much of a price they had to pay for every step forward. However, Yi Shiwen had now revealed a treasure that could help a heavenly venerate's skills greatly. If this treasure had appeared in the hands of an emperor lord, they might have immediately snatched it. However, Yi Shiwen was different. The combat power that Yi Shiwen had displayed was enough for him to protect himself. Who would dare to snatch something from his hands? However, they were still extremely shocked in their hearts. More people realized that the balance between the two sides was suddenly unbalanced. They were suddenly leaning towards Yi Shiwen's side. At this time, Pan Tian finally revealed a horrified look. At this time, Yi Shiwen had really revealed his trump card. Previously, Yi Shiwen was actually just teasing him. He didn't use his full strength at all. How could he, who had always been proud, accept this? He now understood why Yi Shiwen said that the battle couldn't end if he wanted it to. Yi Shiwen already had such an ability at this time. In front of him, Yi Shiwen's entire body was glowing. Even though the two of them were separated by millions of miles, they could still feel the dazzling light that almost filled the entire universe. I originally planned to reveal this trump card during the competition for the position of Eastern Celestial Lord. Now that I've used it to kill you, it's not a loss. Yi Shiwen indifferently said. It seemed as if he was talking about killing an insignificant nobody, and not the formidable existence who had once ruled the stormy sea area for countless years. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen moved. He moved slightly, and the universe around him collapsed. It was no longer stable. The power of time was disrupting everything. Even space was severely affected. His speed surpassed his own limits as he arrived before Pan Tian Venerate and punched out. Bang! Even though Pan Tian Sovereign was hiding behind countless layers of space, he was still struck by the punch. The punch pierced through space and time, allowing him to see Pan Tian Sovereign, who was hiding behind space and time. Half of Pan Tian's body exploded. It was just one punch. If Yi Shiwen and him were evenly matched before, then the current Yi Shiwen had already surpassed the limits of his fighting strength. He could feel that he couldn't keep up with Yi Shiwen's speed. Therefore, he was hit by Yi Shiwen's punch. However, this was just the beginning. Yi Shiwen pounced on him again and engaged in a fierce battle with the Pan Tian Sovereign. With a muffled groan, the Pan Tian Sovereign was blasted away again. A terrifying bloody hole appeared on his body. It was pierced by Yi Shiwen's sword. As time went by, Yi Shiwen's advantage was getting bigger and bigger. Meanwhile, the Pan Tian Sovereign's advantage was being worn away little by little. Yi Shiwen's strength was improving, and his advantage was expanding. Little by little, it turned into an absolute advantage. Even in this situation, Pan Tian Venerable wasn't willing to give up. He was still fighting back. Every time he attacked, he was extremely decisive, ruthless, and elegant. However, he would always be interrupted by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was stronger and faster than him. These 2 points had completely suppressed him. As a result, Pan Tian Venerable's counterattack could only be displayed in a very small range. It couldn't erupt at all. Even if he could occasionally attack Yi Shiwen with his magical powers, it would be dissolved by Yi Shiwen's qi of merit. He couldn't break Yi Shiwen's golden body of merit. Golden body of merit! The Pantheon sovereign had lived for countless years. Naturally, he was experienced and knowledgeable. He didn't recognize it at first, but he soon recognized that the key point of Yi Shiwen's martial arts was this golden body of merit. If it weren't for this golden body of merit, he wouldn't be so passive. Yi Shiwen wouldn't be his opponent in the past. Even if his martial arts had improved greatly, he would at most be tied with him. It was impossible to suppress him to such a sorry state. However, with the addition of this golden body of merit, Yi Shiwen had become extremely difficult to deal with. He roared unwillingly. What kind of virtue and ability did this martial venerable have? What kind of great merit did he have to obtain so much power of virtue to create the golden body of virtue? Everyone knew the benefits of the golden body of merit. The Pantheon sovereign had also thought of creating the golden body of merit. However, he quickly gave up because he knew very well how much power of merit was needed to condense the golden body of merit. It was simply unimaginable. He had ruled the stormy sea region for countless years. He didn't know how many riots he had quelled, but he had never obtained so much merit. Because the Era battlefield was too far away from the fortune world, the matter of Yi Shiwen helping to destroy the 7th Gold Era had not been passed down. Therefore, he could not imagine what kind of meritorious service Yi Shiwen had made to be able to form the golden body of virtue. He had attacked Yi Shiwen's body several times. However, he could only leave a palm print. He couldn't penetrate Yi Shiwen's defense. The defense of the virtuous gilded body had already reached such a level. It was simply unimaginable. Bang! When the Pantheon sovereign was blasted away by Yi Shiwen again, it was difficult for him to face Yi Shiwen, whose strength had skyrocketed no matter how hard he tried to defend. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's strength was increasing at a completely unscientific speed. It was as if there was no limit. What the hell is that fruit? The Pantheon sovereign gritted his teeth. He couldn't think of anything that could increase the strength of a celestial sovereign to this level. His body had already been smashed into pieces. Yi Shiwen's strength was too great. He could even easily pierce through a world. It was normal for his body to be smashed. Yi Shiwen roared and trampled down with his foot. He wanted to trample the Pantheon sovereign's body and spirit into pieces. Roar! The Pantheon sovereign roared. He wasn't willing to die like this, especially to be trampled to death by Yi Shiwen's foot. His origin combusted. His origin, which was already riddled with holes due to the previous injury, started to burn crazily. The terrifying power brought about by the combusting of the law origin brought about a formidable power. It made him fly out in an instant and avoided Yi Shiwen's fatal kick. Chapter 3582. At the brink of death, Pantheon Venerable finally erupted. He burned his own origin and flew tens of millions of miles away, escaping from Yi Shiwen's attack range. Huff, huff, huff. Pantheon Venerable was constantly panting. His body had been blown up, and he had finally recovered with great difficulty. His body was burning with golden flames, emitting traces of the great path nomological laws. Those were the nomological laws that Yi Shiwen had slashed on his body. For ordinary injuries, Pantheon Venerable would only need a breath's time to recover. However, the nomological injuries were directed at the origin of the great path, so he had no way to expel them in a short time. In a battle between heavenly venerables, the slightest mistake could result in death. There was simply no time for him to do so. Yi Shiwen was very strong. What was even more terrifying was that he was still getting stronger. Under such circumstances, Pantheon Venerable simply had no way to resist. Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry, because victory was already in his grasp. He was also waiting for his strength to climb to the peak of the 6th realm. Only then would he be at his strongest. Originally, He had planned to conceal his strength until the Eastern Heavenly Venerable selection. However, it seemed that he could not do so now. However, it was fine. As long as he displayed enough strength, some indifferent Heavenly Venerables would automatically withdraw and not participate in the competition. There were pros and cons. He watched as Pantheon Venerable extinguished the nomological flames on his body one by one. They were left behind when he slashed down. Pantheon Venerable was indeed terrifying. Although he could not expel them, he could temporarily seal these nomological flames to achieve the same effect. Without the interference of the nomological flames, Pantheon Venerable's body was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. His entire body was emitting a dazzling brilliance. The endless nomological laws turned into divine chains that twined around him. From afar, he looked like the core of a huge storm. Celestial light fell like rain. The nomological laws that were originally invisible to the naked eye were now visible to the naked eye as pillars of light that appeared in front of everyone. They crisscrossed like a huge net that divided the world. You've really surprised me. You're just a junior that has attained the Tao for over 10,000 years, yet you're actually able to force me to this extent. If I'm not careful, I might really die at your hands. Coiling Sky Venerable took a deep breath and quickly recovered to his peak. His recovery speed was very fast, but Yi Shiwen had become even stronger. This made his expression turn grave. Every time he breathed, he would absorb an endless amount of spirit energy. With just a casual breath, he would be able to absorb a vast amount of spirit energy. In order to rule the stormy sea region, it was unknown how many powerful enemies had been killed. Even celestial venerables and emperors had died. Only the corpses of these people could pave the throne. This was also the reason why Coiling Sky Venerable wasn't willing to act casually. Many people were afraid of him, and many people were eager for him to die. However, it was not up to him at this moment. If he didn't use his full strength, he would die. In front of him, the phenomenon of time turning back actually occurred. It was extremely terrifying. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to touch this kind of time turning back. In this world, if there was something that even celestial venerables couldn't thoroughly study, it would be time. Time and space formed the two most fundamental elements of this world. However, Yi Shiwen made a surprising move. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched out. It directly blasted into the light rain formed by time. He wasn't afraid of the corrosion of the power of time at all. If it was in the past, Yi Shiwen wouldn't have dared to touch this light rain so rashly. However, now that he had achieved the meritorious tyrant form golden body, there was nothing to be afraid of. The power of time couldn't corrode his meritorious tyrant form golden body. Bang! The fist and the palm collided. Yi Shiwen's fist and Coiling Sky Venerable's palm collided fiercely. In an instant, an earth-shattering collision erupted. The terrifying power reverberated back to both sides, immediately triggering many strange phenomena on both sides. Bursts of golden light overflowed from Yi Shiwen's body, eliminating this power. Meanwhile, the phantom of the Pan-Heavenly Palace appeared on Coiling Sky Venerable's body, blocking this power outside. Thump, thump, thump. Coiling Sky Venerable retreated a few steps in succession. Only then did he finally remove the shock brought by Yi Shiwen's attack. His face changed slightly because this meant that Yi Shiwen's skill had surpassed him. Even if he took back the Pan-Heavenly Palace, he couldn't reverse this trend. He only felt that his qi and blood were boiling. This boiling was caused by Yi Shiwen's attack. It wasn't easy for him to launch the power of time in the form of the light rain. It consumed a lot of his qi and blood. However, Yi Shiwen's strength seemed to have no bottom line. He was constantly getting stronger. He finally understood that if he continued to delay, it would be a dead end for him. In an instant, Coiling Sky Venerable roared. He pounced on Yi Shiwen like a madman, trying to kill him. terrifying attacks broke out one after another. The divine light that was emitted all over the sky interweaved into countless waterfalls, directly blasting towards Yi Shiwen. The entire world was silent. Everyone was looking at this scene. It was too terrifying. On the other hand, Yi Shiwen took a step forward and spread out his 5 fingers. Every finger would burst out with an immortal light, which transformed into a sword aura. These sword auras interweaved into a dense net, and also counterattacked. Rumble! Endless attacks broke out again. Yi Shiwen's qi and blood were terrifyingly vigorous. He attacked without any scruples. However, Coiling Sky Venerable wasn't so good. The pan-heavenly palace on his body constantly manifested. Under the slash of Yi Shiwen's sword qi, cracks appeared one after another. His qi and blood were surging. He felt that the power in his body was about to explode. In just a short period of time, he was beaten to the point of vomiting blood again. In this fierce confrontation, Yi Shiwen became stronger and stronger, while he became weaker and smaller. Even the law flames formed by the great way that Yi Shiwen had slashed out broke free from the seal and wreaked havoc on his body again. His physical body had suffered so many attacks at the same time. The power was unimaginable. Almost instantly, his body exploded again. The fresh blood exploded like rain, splattering everywhere in the universe. Everyone held their breath. Coiling Sky Venerable had exceeded his limits again and again, erupting with his peak combat power. However, he was still suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's combat power made many celestial masters put him on the list of the most dangerous. Kill in one blow! Yi Shiwen roared. Above his head, the martial honor seal flew out. It was also emitting endless light of merit. It was a sacred tool of merit. Its power was also the top celestial master Dao tool. Yi Shiwen hadn't used it since just now. Now, he finally used it. He wanted to kill Coiling Sky Venerable in one blow. Suddenly, at this moment, several attacks swept across the sky. They swept directly towards Yi Shiwen to interrupt his attack. Rumble! Yi Shiwen didn't care about anything else. Coiling Sky Venerable screamed and was beaten into ashes. Chapter 3583. Boom! Countless attacks fell on his body while Yi Shiwen was killing Pan Tian Sr. They transformed into streamers of light around his body. They couldn't break through the defense of his virtuous gilded tyrant body. Yi Shiwen looked up and saw that at the end of the endless void, several figures were faintly discernible. They were the heavenly venerables from the outer domain. They had interfered with him at the most critical moment. These foreign heavenly venerables hadn't appeared before. But now they had finally made their move. No one had intervened when Yi Shiwen had beheaded Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerables. That was because Ancient Chaos Heavenly Venerables had crossed the boundary. So, it wasn't convenient for the Heavenly Venerables of the Stormy Sea region to intervene. Therefore, they had borrowed Yi Shiwen's hand to eradicate these people. However, Pan Tian Venerate was different. Pan Tian Venerate was a heavenly venerate born and bred in the Stormy Sea domain. Many heavenly venerates still remembered the shadow of his rule in the Stormy Sea domain. Therefore, he had waited until the last moment before finally making his move. Pan Tian Venerate had already suffered serious injuries, and no one knew how long it would take for him to recover. Yi Shiwen looked a little annoyed. The celestial venerables of the outer domain had acted in unison. However, they had managed to rescue a wisp of Pan Tian Venerable's soul amidst the chaos. With the strength of a heavenly venerable, he would be able to recover sooner or later as long as he had a wisp of his primordial spirit. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't angry about this. After all, although a wisp of Pan Tian Venerable's primordial spirit had escaped, he might still be very powerful in the eyes of others. After recovering for a period of time, he would make them tremble. But to him, Pan Tian could no longer be a threat. By the time Pan Tian spent tens of thousands of years to recover to his current realm, he would already be unimaginably strong. However, he was angry that he had made a mistake and nearly allowed them to rescue Pan Tian Tian Venerate. His gaze was like a torch. When the heavenly venerables from the foreign domains sensed it, they immediately felt a little numb on their back. They were all heavenly venerables, so it was impossible for Yi Shiwen's gaze to make them feel any discomfort. It was also impossible for him to kill them with his spirit. However, they had seen how Yi Shiwen had bravely beheaded several celestial masters in a row. So, they felt a chill down their spines. Yi Shiwen coldly looked at them and finally said, "All of you, get out of the eastern region, or else I will kill all of you." Yi Shiwen's ultimatum made their expressions turn ugly, but in the end, none of them dared to make a move against Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's appearance also made them understand that the rumor of the Fortune God dynasty's army's annihilation was probably false. This was enough to shock them. According to the information they had received, it was impossible for the Fortune God dynasty to escape and ascend to the heavens. It was precisely because of this that they dared to make a move. In the end, they were told that their previous judgment was wrong. With Yi Shiwen's return, it wouldn't be long before the Fortune Divine Dynasty's army returned. Although the foreign allied forces were in full swing, they were already an arrow at the end of its flight. I'm afraid that a bloody battle will be inevitable when the time comes. In fact, I might even have to cough up the spoils of war that I've swallowed during this period of time. After confronting each other for a while, the foreign Empyreans were finally the first to be unable to hold on, and they left one after another. Yi Shiwen grabbed the corpse of Pan Tian Tian into his inner world, and used it to water the world tree. After all, Pan Tian 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 was in existence who had once reached the peak. After watering the world tree with his blood essence, the world tree's fruit began to show faint signs of ripening again. It was much more useful than killing Ancient Chaos, Heavenly Master and the others. After the world tree's fruit ripened, it would undoubtedly be much easier for him to break through to the seventh realm and become a high-level Empyrean. Without the world tree's fruit, it would be impossible for Yi Shiwen to improve his cultivation in such a short period of time. Even if he had the mysterious space to improve his understanding of the Great Tao, it wouldn't work. This was because any understanding of cultivation would ultimately be implemented into the improvement of skills. After killing Pan Tian 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 Tian, Yi Shiwen returned to the Eastern Empyrean Palace, and immediately issued a decree, summoning all the Empyreans in the eastern region to discuss the strategy to resist the foreign army. It wasn't that Yi Shiwen didn't want to rush in front of those Empyrean Palace and start a massacre. However, Yi Shiwen even felt a few auras that were stronger than him, so he refrained from making a move. The foreign region was also filled with experts. If it weren't for this, the foreign region would have long been conquered by the Fortune God dynasty. It could even be said that the overall strength of the foreign region was above that of the Fortune God dynasty. It was just that for so many years, no one and no force could unify the foreign region, so these forces were wasted. Yi Shiwen originally didn't have the qualifications to summon these Empyrean Palace. However, before returning, he had obtained the authorization of the Middle Empyrean Palace, so he could mobilize the Eastern region's forces to resist the Stormy Sea region's coalition forces. At this time, if they dared to disobey, then they would be truly going against the Fortune God dynasty. Especially now that the Eastern Empyrean Palace had become a Middle Empyrean Palace, he could mobilize the entire Fortune God dynasty's forces. Whoever dared to disobey his orders would be going against the entire Fortune God dynasty. That would be truly courting death. Therefore, Yi Shiwen wasn't worried. He directly sat in the Eastern Empyrean Palace and waited for them to appear. They hadn't appeared just now. After watching the show for so long, it was time for them to come out. After Yi Shiwen's decree was issued, the first person to appear was none other than the red-robed Xianyuan Empyrean. He was also the first Empyrean Yi Shiwen had seen after achieving Tao. After more than 10,000 years, the aura exuding from Xianyuan Empyrean was still unfathomable. Even now, Yi Shiwen couldn't completely see through his strength. He only knew that he was definitely a high-level Empyrean. Even if his strength wasn't comparable to a middle Empyrean, it wasn't too far off. At the very least, he was in existence not inferior to the Moon City Lord. If it wasn't for his cultivation reaching this level, Yi Shiwen wouldn't have known that there was such a tyrannical existence hidden in the eastern region that was comparable to the Eastern Empyrean. If it was before, Yi Shiwen wouldn't even have the qualifications to look up to him. But now, his combat strength was also comparable to a high-level Empyrean. If he used the supreme ancestral symbol, he could even fight with the Moon City Lord. The situation was naturally different. Brother Xianyuan Empyrean, long time no see. You are still as elegant as ever, congratulations. Yi Shiwen said with a smile. What does this count as? I've only been making no progress for more than 10,000 years. But you've just achieved Tao 10,000 years ago, and now even Pan Tian Tian almost died in your hands. You're really something. Xianyuan Empyrean said, when he was still in power, don't be too arrogant. I'm afraid he didn't expect that he would end up like this. Xianyuan Empyrean's words implied that he had interacted with Pan Tian Tian back then, which was why he was so emotional about the impermanence of the world. Perhaps even the craziest person back then would never have thought that Pan Tian 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 would fall in the hands of a junior. Now, although Pan Tian 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 had luckily escaped with a strand of his soul, in reality, it was no different from dying. He had already lost touch with the rest of them. In the upcoming great changes, if he didn't get the opportunity, he would never have the chance to catch up to them. Unrighteousness leads to self-destruction. When he was ruling the Stormy Sea area, I don't know how many sins he had committed and how many people he had offended. If those Empyreans of the Stormy Sea area had intervened earlier, I might have had the chance to injure Pan Tian 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 to this extent. Yi Shiwen sneered. At this time, how could he not understand that those Empyreans of the Stormy Sea area had decided to intervene at this time? They clearly wanted to save Pan Tian Tian Tian, but they didn't want him to be in his peak state. It could also be said that the sins he had committed in his early years were karma. Everything was predetermined by the heavens. It was just that when he was at his peak, suppressing the entire Stormy Sea area and no one could resist him, he never thought that he would have to pay the price in the future. Because the existence of Empyreans was eternal, under normal circumstances, it was impossible for them to die of old age. Who would have thought that there would be such a future? But since brother is also here, why didn't you do anything and watch the foreign allied forces kill their way here? Yi Shiwen said with a hint of reproach in his words. Ever since he found out that those Empyreans had become turtles, Yi Shiwen had been hiding a bit of anger in his heart. Xianyuan Tianzuan didn't care. He could naturally see that Yi Shiwen was a bit angry, but he still opened his mouth and said, Wu Zun, do you think this matter is so simple? Do you think that everyone has become turtles? I felt it the moment the foreign forces invaded, but at that time, there was an old friend that I hadn't seen for a long time looking for me to talk about old times, so I couldn't get away. Although Xianyuan Tianzuan didn't say it clearly, but Yi Shiwen still understood. What old friend? It was most likely an old enemy. To be able to stop Xianyuan Tianzuan, this person must not be a simple character. Even in the Stormy Sea area, he must be one of the strongest. Then Xianyuan Tianzuan's expression became a bit dignified, saying, This time, the foreign allied forces have been preparing for a long time. It definitely wasn't because they heard the rumor that the Fortune God Dynasty's army had been destroyed. With the Fortune God Dynasty's strength, even if the Fortune God Dynasty's army was completely destroyed, they still wouldn't be completely defenseless. At least we are still in the Fortune God Dynasty, but even we were delayed. Not only did I meet an old friend, many other old friends also personally came to visit. This time, the foreign allied forces didn't have any Empyreans, and even if there were, they weren't powerful characters. Even your sword art's avatar was able to defeat them, because the real powerful characters are all visiting us. Do you think that now that you've returned, everything is over? Even if a Middle Empyrean returns, the real trouble has only just begun. Chapter 3584. Do you think that everything is over now that you've returned? Even if a Middle Tianzuan returns, the real trouble has only just begun. Xianyuan Tianzuan said with a faint smile. What do you mean? Yi Shiwen frowned slightly and said. In his opinion, once the Fortune Divine Dynasty's army returned, it would only be a matter of time before the allied forces retreated. No matter how much of an advantage they had at this time, in front of the Fortune Divine Dynasty's absolute strength, they would still be badly battered. If they didn't want to be beaten black and blue by the Fortune Divine Dynasty, it would be best for them to retreat to the outer world with their current harvest. As for whether or not the Fortune God Dynasty would retaliate, that was a matter for a long time to come. The entire Fortune God Dynasty was in a mess. Even if the Fortune God Dynasty returned, it would take a long time to sort out the mess, especially since the problems that had been exposed in this matter could not be underestimated. Moreover, the position of the Eastern Heavenly Lord hadn't been chosen yet. So, there were still a lot of things that would give him a headache. The Fortune Divine Dynasty had never had a tradition of swallowing a grievance after suffering a loss. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, was the Fortune Divine Dynasty's tradition. Therefore, it could be expected that a series of big actions would follow. Just when Yi Shiwen thought that Xianyuan Tianzuan was referring to this matter, Xianyuan Tianzuan continued. If you think that this matter is as simple as the foreign allied forces taking advantage of the Fortune God Dynasty's absence, then you are gravely mistaken. Isn't that so? It's not that I'm underestimating them, but with the Fortune God Dynasty's strength, they have no chance of winning, Yi Shiwen said as he took a sip of immortal tea. This expedition to the epic battlefield had allowed Yi Shiwen to witness the true strength of the Fortune God Dynasty. The foundation of the Fortune God Dynasty was far more than what everyone had imagined. Moreover, they had only mobilized a portion of the Fortune God Dynasty's strength. If the local tyrants were included, they hadn't even mobilized half of the Fortune God Dynasty's true strength. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had personally witnessed the dreadfulness of the Dominator's Dao tools in this battle. It didn't matter whether it was the heaven-opening devil axe or the fortune of the universe map. Either one of them had the potential to change the outcome of a battle. It was fine if the foreign allied forces escaped quickly, but if they were too slow, they would really die. They wouldn't even know how they died. In front of this power, even an Empyrean seemed completely useless. I also know what your confidence is. Under normal circumstances, the Scroll of Fortune universe is indeed very effective, but if you think it will be useful this time, then you're too naive. Xianyuan Tianzuan took a sip of tea and slowly said, under normal circumstances, the universe creation map would naturally be able to suppress this group of evil. However, the one you've provoked this time is completely different. Do you still remember when you were trying to kill Heavenly Venerate Ancient Chaos? Heavenly Venerate Pantheon warned you not to kill Heavenly Venerate Ancient Chaos. Is it related to the person behind Ancient Chaos, Heavenly Lord? Yi Shiwen frowned and asked. He immediately thought of the existence that the Pantheon Sovereign had once mentioned. Given the status of the Pantheon Sovereign, he was not inferior to the Eastern Sky Sovereign and the others. Although he could not be compared to the past, he was still someone who had once dominated a region. No matter how one looked at it, he was not a simple person. But when he mentioned that existence, his words were still full of fear, and he even wanted to take Yi Shiwen's head to appease him. This was simply unbelievable. At that time, the Middle Sky Sovereign and the others were already the top existences. Who could make the Pantheon Sovereign so afraid? Yes, it is related to the person behind ancient chaos, heavenly venerate. If I were you, I would also not choose to kill ancient chaos, heavenly venerate. Xianyuan Tianzuan said. What, even you are afraid of that so-called existence? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but ask. First, the Pantheon sovereign said so, then the Xianyuan Tianzuan also said so. This made him a little curious. He had always been decisive in doing things, never regretting, because there was no use in regretting. At that time, with the situation of ancient chaos heavenly venerate, he had no choice but to kill. Because at that time, Sword Master's avatar could only maintain a high level of combat power for a limited time, and the range was also limited. If he did not kill, the human race might have been exterminated by ancient chaos heavenly venerate. With the situation of the human race at that time, no one could stop ancient chaos heavenly venerate. Even if there was a super master behind ancient chaos heavenly venerate, Yi Shiwen would not be lenient. I'm not afraid, but I am very afraid. If you knew his identity, you would also be afraid of him. Xianyuan Tianzuan said, I can tell you this, when the Middle Sky Sovereign returned to the Fortune Divine Capital to take away the Fortune Universe map, I saw him. He was indeed a bit stronger than me, but I can tell you that even the Middle Sky Sovereign was not his opponent. In the current era, no one is qualified to be his opponent. No one in the world is his match? Yi Shiwen's spirit was slightly shaken. What kind of person was a Middle Sky Sovereign? Not to mention the Fortune Divine Dynasty, even in the countless ancient eras, he was one of the top existences. It could be said that in those ancient eras, those who could be mentioned in the same breath as a Middle Sky Sovereign could be counted on one's fingers. As far as he knew, probably only the Demon Dao era's demon Venerable Rahu could be mentioned in the same breath as a Middle Sky Sovereign. Even with Yi Shiwen's current situation, he had to admit that a Middle Sky Sovereign was much stronger than him. Moreover, that mysterious person was even stronger than a Middle Heavenly Master. This made Yi Shiwen curious about him. Yes, in the current era, no one is his opponent. His previous opponent was the Good Fortune Heavenly Lord. Xianyuan Tianzuan said. Because of the mention of the Good Fortune Heavenly Lord, even the usually cynical Xianyuan Tianzuan had to be serious. The Good Fortune Heavenly Lord? Yi Shiwen's pupils slightly widened. In the Fortune Divine Dynasty, the Good Fortune Heavenly Lord was undoubtedly a legend among legends. Everything related to him was a legend. Fortune Heavenly Monarch's life was a legend. When the Fortune God Dynasty's people were trembling under the rule of the foreign domain's creatures, it was he who stood up, defeated countless powerful enemies, and single-handedly founded the Fortune God Dynasty, creating the current situation. Therefore, everything related to him was a legend and a myth. With the strength and achievements of the Good Fortune Heavenly Lord, he could be said to be invincible. And those who were qualified to be his opponents were few and far between. Most of them were directly killed by him, and those who could be called his opponents were few and far between. Yes, he is one of the few people that can be called an opponent of the Fortune Heavenly Lord, called the Chaotic Overlord. Before the Fortune Heavenly Lord was born, he was the #1 person in the Fortune world. When the Fortune Heavenly Lord was establishing the Fortune God Dynasty, he and the Chaotic Overlord had fought several times, and several times they were evenly matched. Even though the Fortune Heavenly Lord grew stronger and gained the upper hand, he was never able to truly defeat the Chaotic Overlord. In the end, a life-and-death battle broke out between the two, and it was in this battle that the Fortune Heavenly Lord finally broke through and reached the realm of the Supreme Ruler. In the end, he defeated the Chaotic Overlord and sealed him until now. Chaotic Overlord? Yi Shiwen said, it seems that the person behind Ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord is him. Indeed, Ancient Chaos Heavenly Lord is the youngest pro-disciple of the Chaotic Overlord, and also the only pro-disciple of the Chaotic Overlord. The other prodisciples were either killed by the good fortune Heavenly Lord during the rise of the Fortune God dynasty, or by other masters of the Fortune God dynasty. This is his only prodisciple, and you killed ancient chaos Heavenly Lord, so you're in big trouble. Xianyuan Tianzuan said with a faint smile, if it was me, I would also be afraid, because I'm all alone, so there's nothing to be afraid of. But you are different, the human race is your biggest weakness, you can't escape, you're in big trouble. Yi Shiwen frowned. What's wrong, wasn't the chaotic overlord sealed? He can still come out? Could it be that the seal's time has already passed? Xianyuan Tianzuan nodded and said, from the time the chaotic overlord was sealed until now, who knows how many years it's been, the seal has already loosened. This time, if not for the chaotic overlord's appearance, the foreign allied forces would not have been able to organize. After all, the foreign world has been divided for so many years, even a giant like Pan Tian Tianzuan could not truly command all the foreign creatures to obey his command. Can't it be resealed? Yi Shiwen asked. I'm afraid it's impossible. Do you know the location of the Fortune Universe map? It is in the place where the primal Chaos Overlord is sealed. For many years, the Fortune of the Universe scroll has not been activated unless it can be activated. Even when the foreign armies invaded the divine capital of Fortune last time, the Fortune of the Universe scroll was not activated. Other than the fact that the foreign armies that invaded the divine capital of Fortune at that time were not enough to pose a fatal threat to the divine capital of Fortune, the other reason is that the Fortune of the Universe scroll cannot easily leave. Especially in recent years, the seal left behind by the Fortune Divine Lord has become more and more loose, so it needs the Fortune Universe map to suppress it. Even so, it can only delay the time for the seal to be broken. This time, if it wasn't for the fact that we had no choice but to fight against the heaven-splitting demon axe, I would have personally reinforced the seal, but without the Fortune Universe map, it was only a matter of time before the chaotic overlord came out. At that time, several of us joined hands and spent a long time to finally fill the hole left by the Fortune Universe map, otherwise, the chaotic overlord would have already come out. Yi Shiwen suddenly realized why the Middle Heavenly Master had taken such a long time to bring the Fortune of the Universe map back. It turned out that there was such a reason behind it. Chapter 3585. At that time, the Middle Heavenly Venerate must have fallen into a dilemma. If he didn't take away the Fortune Creation Universe map, the demonic era and the other ancient eras would firmly occupy Moon City and use it as a stronghold to send an endless stream of troops. With this loophole, the armies of the ancient eras could march straight into the Fortune God dynasty. At that time, the situation would be dire. Such a thing happened in the current era when the demonic era conquered the Fortune Creation Universe map. In terms of a single epoch, no epoch could compare to the martial epoch. Even the demonic epoch was far inferior. However, compared to the strength of all the ancient epochs, the martial epoch would not be able to match its strength. If they occupied a breakthrough point, they would be able to send in a steady stream of troops. In the end, the entire era would be in danger of being lost. But if they took away the Fortune Creation Universe map, it might give the unparalleled authority suppressed within a chance to come out. That was the powerhouse suppressed and sealed by the Fortune Creation Heavenly Venerate. He was unrivaled in the current era. Relatively speaking, the destruction of an era was more dangerous. Therefore, after careful consideration, the Middle Heavenly Venerate could only choose the lesser of two evils. At this time, he finally understood what Xianyuan Heavenly Venerate meant when he said this was the beginning of the trouble. Although the Fortune God dynasty had successfully recaptured Moon City and chased away the demonic era and the other ancient eras, Moon City had been destroyed. This place would become the weakest point of the entire era's battlefield, requiring a large number of troops to guard it. Internally, the primal Chaos Overlord's seal would also be broken. An unparalleled authority was about to come out, which would have a huge impact on the Fortune God dynasty's rule. It might even topple the Fortune God dynasty's rule. The current situation could be said to be filled with internal and external troubles. It might even be the most dangerous situation in recent years. Sigh, this Fortune creation heavenly venerate has done things cleanly. He actually left such a terrifying time bomb in the Fortune God capital. It's too dangerous. At this point, Yi Shiwen could not help but complain. The Fortune creation heavenly venerate's hands were simply not clean. He actually left such a huge time bomb here. If he had been in Yi Shiwen's shoes, he would have killed him directly. After all, he wouldn't have left such a big hidden danger behind. Yi Shiwen wasn't a person who killed people like flies. However, he was also a decisive person. He knew who should be left alive and who shouldn't be left alive. This kind of existence that could pose a direct threat to the Fortune Divine Dynasty should have been dealt with a long time ago. Otherwise, such a big flaw would not have been left behind. This was a problem that even a Middle Empyrean couldn't deal with. Xianyuan Tianzuan smirked. Although he didn't know what a time bomb was, he could understand what it meant. I don't know about that, but I'm sure Fortune Heavenly Lord must have his reasons. Xianyuan Tianzuan squinted his eyes, took a sip of immortal tea and said. Yi Shiwen ridiculed in his heart. Does Lord Good Fortune intend to test his descendants? Such a reason is a bit too ridiculous. But now that we have driven out the ancient era's army, we will soon be able to dispatch the army back. At that time, the Fortune Creation Universe map will also return, so it should be able to suppress it again. Yi Shiwen said. In theory, yes, but in reality you can't look at it that way. As the seal gradually loosens, the power of the chaotic overlord will become stronger and stronger. In this case, the Fortune Creation Universe map that was originally used to suppress the chaotic overlord will not be able to suppress it anymore. Xianyuan Tianzuan continued. The original seal did not require the use of the Fortune Creation Universe map, so you probably heard that in the early years, the Fortune Divine Dynasty had used the Fortune Creation Universe map to settle some problems, but in recent years, it hasn't been used anymore. It's because the Fortune Creation Universe map is used to suppress the chaotic overlord. However, the Fortune Creation Universe map's fierce reputation is still there, so the foreign armies don't dare to provoke it. Yi Shiwen nodded. Many problems that he didn't understand before were suddenly solved. The Fortune God Dynasty's strength was still very strong, but the problems that the Fortune God Dynasty faced were also very thorny. It was not something that ordinary people could deal with. Now you finally understand what kind of trouble you've provoked. The chaotic overlord can come out at any time, and once he comes out, I'm afraid you'll be the first to bear the brunt. Even if he can't come out for the time being, there are still cracks on the seal. If a part of his soul escapes, it will probably transform into an extremely powerful existence. It's this soul incarnation that is able to command so many foreign armies. Xianyuan Tianzuan said. It seems that in order to deal with him, only the Lord of Fortune Divine Dynasty can reappear. Yi Shiwen said. That's right, in this world, only the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord can seal him. At that time, the difference between him and the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord was only half a step away from reaching that unprecedented level. In the end, the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord managed to take that step, but at that time, he was only one step away. In the current Fortune God Dynasty, whether it's me, the Middle Heavenly Lord, or anyone else, no one can compare to him. Xianyuan Tianzuan said without hiding anything. The gap between him and the Chaos Overlord was also a fact. Is the Fortune Creation Universe map still not enough to suppress him? Yi Shiwen asked. Suppress? Xianyuan Tianzuan sneered. Even if it's the Fortune Creation Universe map, the power it can unleash depends on the person using it. If the Lord of Fortune Divine Dynasty was still alive, then he would naturally be invincible. But if it's us, then the power would be greatly reduced. Against the same level of Lord of Fortune Divine Dynasty, it would be extremely powerful. But for a master like the chaotic overlord, there are too many tricks up his sleeve. Yi Shiwen immediately understood the meaning of Xianyuan Tianzuan's words. In other words, even with the fortune creation universe map, it could only be regarded as self-defense. It would be impossible to defeat the chaotic overlord unless one reached the same level as him. In the future, the best-case scenario for the entire fortune world would be divided into two parts. Unlike the previous situation where the fortune god dynasty was in charge, this time it would truly be divided into two parts. With the chaotic overlord in charge, the golden age of the foreign domains would soon arrive. Even if they couldn't defeat the fortune god dynasty, maintaining the offensive and gaining the upper hand would be a very simple matter. The situation of a stalemate inside and outside would be the real test for the fortune god dynasty. Now we can only hope that the chaos overlord can look at the big picture. What good is there in destroying my fortune god dynasty? It will only benefit the ancient era. And once the ancient era invades, even the chaos overlord won't be able to stop them. The reason why the outer realms were able to enjoy so many years of peace was because of our fortune god dynasty. Xianyuan Tianzuan said with a hint of worry. For a person as carefree as him to say such words, one could imagine how much pressure the chaotic overlord exerted on him. Although the era he was active in wasn't that chaotic era, it wasn't too far away after all. He had truly felt the huge influence of the chaos overlord. Unlike Yi Shiwen, who had never heard of the chaos overlord, he could understand its horror. Different situations call for different actions. Since it is only a matter of time before the chaotic overlord is born, then we shouldn't think too much about it. At worst, we will just fight. Right now, the only thing I am worried about is the appearance of his main body. Whatever spirit incarnation or whatever, I am not worried about it. If it appears, then we will destroy it, Yi Shiwen said with a sigh of relief. He didn't know how powerful the chaotic overlord's main body was, but if it was just a spirit incarnation, then no matter how powerful it was, it wouldn't be a big deal even if it was on par with the Moon City City Lord. He had almost killed the Moon City City Lord in the past. Now that he was even stronger, and he had also obtained a blessing in disguise by cultivating the meritorious tyrant form golden body, what was there to be afraid of? If he encountered the Moon City City Lord again, as long as he was willing to pay a huge price, he was absolutely confident that he could kill the Moon City City Lord. It was just that Yi Shiwen felt that paying such a huge price to kill the Moon City City Lord was not worth it. However, Yi Shiwen had never underestimated the primal chaos overlord even though he said so. After all, the primal chaos overlord used to be a great enemy of the Lord of Good Fortune. Only a few people had obtained such a title since ancient times. Among these people, the chaotic overlord was known as the #1 person in the world. His strength was so strong that he could almost become a sovereign lord, and compete with the Lord of Good Fortune, Demon Ancestor, and the others. There was a saying that one's level could be seen from his enemies, and this was fully reflected in the chaotic overlord. Xianyuan Tianzuan looked at Yi Shiwen with some surprise. It seemed that Yi Shiwen wasn't bragging or boasting. Obviously, he really had the ability. At this time, the news of Yi Shiwen escaping from the Moon City Lord and seriously injuring him had yet to spread, so he didn't know. However, he knew that if Yi Shiwen dared to say such a thing, then he must have some ability to deal with the chaotic overlord's spirit incarnation. It was just that the chaotic overlord's spirit incarnation was not that easy to deal with, and even he didn't dare to say that he had complete confidence in winning. Otherwise, he could directly kill his way to the chaotic overlord's spirit incarnation. Wouldn't that be twice the result with half the effort? It's best that you have confidence in yourself. If you can't handle it, you can always ask the middle Tianzuan for help. Xianyuan Tianzuan said without hesitation. From now on, the world is full of troubles. After Xianyuan Tianzuan arrived at the Eastern Tianzuan mansion to attend the meeting, the other Tianzuan also came one after another. In the end, none of them had the courage to go against the decree of the Fortune God dynasty. This supreme majesty was dyed with the blood of countless traitors, and no one dared to go against Yi Shiwen, who had obviously come on behalf of the Middle Tianzuan. Chapter 3586. After Xianyuan Tianzuan, the person who appeared at the Eastern Tianzuan residence was none other than the Heavenly Tao Sect's patriarch, one of the most powerful figures in the Eastern Territory. Not only was he one of the most powerful figures in the Eastern region, but he was also one of the most powerful forces in the entire Fortune Divine dynasty. The fact that Heavenly Tao was able to rule over the world proved that he was an extremely powerful figure. In fact, this was Yi Shiwen's first time meeting the Heavenly Tao Sect's patriarch. The Heavenly Tao Sect's patriarch didn't give Yi Shiwen any face and sat down, facing Xianyuan Tianzuan from a distance. "You're here. You still have that scowl on your face, it's been so many years," Xianyuan Tianzuan said with a hint of pity. Clearly, this wasn't the first time the two of them had crossed paths over the years. Facing Xianyuan Tianzuan's words, even the Heavenly Tao Sect's patriarch couldn't change his expression. He only coldly glanced at him, then looked at Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen was also paying attention to the Heavenly Tao Sect's patriarch. The grudge between Yi Shiwen and the Heavenly Tao Sect had already been formed twice when he first arrived at the Fortune God realm. Yi Shiwen casually killed one of the Heavenly Tao Sect's emperors, and the Heavenly Tao Sect's revenge came one after another. But at that time, the Heavenly Tao Sect probably didn't care about Yi Shiwen at all. Compared to the behemoth that was the Heavenly Tao Sect, Yi Shiwen wasn't an ant, but the result was the same. Later on, Yi Shiwen's growth speed was extremely fast. In the end, the grudge between the two sides was resolved by the Eastern Tianzuan. The Heavenly Tao Sect still gave the Eastern Tianzuan some face, and their actions against Yi Shiwen decreased a lot. Or it could be said that Yi Shiwen's growth speed was too fast, so it wasn't suitable for them to do anything. Now that the page between the two sides had been turned over, the relationship between the two sides couldn't be considered good. Especially when Yi Shiwen chose to lead the human race to join the Fortune God dynasty's camp. This naturally put the Heavenly Tao Sect in the opposing ranks of the commoners. It had been a long time since the Fortune God dynasty's people wanted to be independent, and the Heavenly Tao Sect was the leader among them. However, this was something that everyone in the world knew. Why did the Fortune God dynasty give the Heavenly Tao Sect a way out? Especially in the Eastern region. Everyone knew how powerful the Eastern Lord was. The Silver Moon clan and the Heavenly Tao Sect were considered as one clan and one religion in the Eastern region. However, the Heavenly Tao Sect didn't give a damn about the Fortune God dynasty at all. Yi Shiwen had thought that the Heavenly Tao Sect was a very powerful person. Compared to the situation in the other regions, the Eastern region only had the Silver Moon tribe and Heavenly Tao Sect before the rise of the human race. After the Silver Moon tribe bowed to the human race, only the Heavenly Tao Sect was able to become the strongest force in the Eastern region, independently supporting the people's resistance against the Fortune Divine dynasty, becoming the leader of these resistance forces. In fact, in the eyes of the Fortune God dynasty, besides the Heavenly Tao Sect, the other so-called powerful forces didn't even have a heavenly master. As for the other regions, there were at least a few super sects and super powerful clans like the Heavenly Taoism and the Silver Moon clan that could barely contend with the celestial venerables of the other regions by joining forces. Only the Heavenly Taoism was an exception, and it managed to do so by itself. The saying that the Heavenly Tao Sect was the leader of the world's great sects was spread under such circumstances. It was indeed because of the Heavenly Tao Sect's foundation. because the heavenly Tao sect's true strength was actually a peak heavenly master. He might be a little bit weaker than a middle heavenly master, but he wasn't any weaker than the Moon City Lord. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sigh. The Fortune God dynasty was indeed full of experts. Besides the heavenly masters of the various regions and the city lords of the 10 divine cities, there were still such forces hidden among the commoners. These people didn't seem to be on good terms with the Fortune God dynasty, but in fact, if necessary, they had to obey the Fortune God dynasty's orders and serve the entire Fortune God dynasty. After all, the confrontation between the Heavenly Tao sect and the Fortune God dynasty was different from that of the other regions. There was no fundamental conflict between them. It was just a competition between the Fortune God dynasty and the Heavenly Tao sect in the process of development. The Fortune God dynasty's foundation was built up bit by bit over countless years. With the Fortune God dynasty's framework here, everyone had no choice but to work for it. Just like him, didn't he also have to work for the Fortune God dynasty? It was just that this process was mutually beneficial. He had obtained great benefits through the Fortune God dynasty. The Fortune God dynasty had swept away many obstacles for him and provided him with a lot of resources. In addition, he had also made many great contributions to the Fortune God dynasty. However, Yi Shiwen felt that the Heavenly Tao sect's patriarch wouldn't compete for the Eastern Heavenly Master's position given his status. This was because he was the leader of the commoners' forces. In fact, his influence wasn't any less than the Eastern Heavenly Master's. If he gave up for the Eastern Heavenly Master's position, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Otherwise, with the current strength of the Heavenly Tao sect's patriarch, it could be said that if not him, who else could it be? Of course, with his status, the Fortune God dynasty wouldn't allow him to participate in the competition. Wouldn't it be a ridiculous joke for the leader of a commoner's force to become the Eastern Heavenly Master? Lord Heavenly Master, please. Yi Shiwen raised his teacup and gestured. The Heavenly Tao sect's patriarch nodded slightly. He still didn't have a good expression on his face. In today's world, there was probably no one worthy of his attention. With his status, he wasn't inferior to the heavenly masters of the various regions. Moreover, his strength wasn't inferior to theirs. Guarding the Heavenly Tao sect's territory was also free and unfettered. Naturally, he wasn't willing to look at other people's faces. He was willing to be moved by Yi Shiwen because Yi Shiwen's speed of growth was really shocking. Although Yi Shiwen's current strength was really terrifying in the eyes of many people, in his eyes, it wasn't enough to move him. What truly moved him was Yi Shiwen's speed of growth. He couldn't help but pay attention to Yi Shiwen because Yi Shiwen had used the Heavenly Tao sect in his first battle in the Fortune God realm. At that time, the Heavenly Tao sect's patriarch was high and mighty, so he naturally wouldn't care about such a small matter. But from the time Yi Shiwen appeared in the Fortune God dynasty until now, a total of less than 20,000 years had passed. He was only a fourth realm emperor when he first appeared, but now, he could even kill heavenly masters. With such a shocking cultivation speed, the Heavenly Tao sect's patriarch didn't know what kind of fortuitous encounter he had and how many great fortunes he had obtained to achieve his current cultivation. In fact, if he didn't know very well, he would even think that Yi Shiwen was the reincarnation of an ancient heavenly master. No, even the reincarnation of an ancient heavenly master wouldn't have such a speed. With his many years of experience and knowledge, he could only say that this was a miracle. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before Yi Shiwen could be on equal footing with them. Even a lonely person like Xian Yuan Heavenly Master could chat and laugh with him. This was indeed not something an ordinary person could do. What's the situation at the epic battlefield now? The Heavenly Tao sect's patriarch thought for a while and finally asked. He didn't go to the epic battlefield to fight, but it didn't mean that he didn't care about it at all. On the contrary, he was very concerned about it. It was because he knew how terrifying those ancient eras were that he was especially concerned about the result. If Moon City couldn't be recaptured, the consequences would be unimaginable. If the fortune world was destroyed, no eggs would remain intact when the nest was overturned. Speaking of this question, Xianyuan Heavenly Master also pricked up his ears. He also wanted to ask this question clearly. Now, there was no one else who came back from the epic battlefield except for Yi Shiwen. So if they wanted to know the real and accurate news, they had to find out from Yi Shiwen. The ancient era has been driven out, but Moon City has also been destroyed. I don't know how much time and energy it will take to rebuild it. Facing the two of them, Yi Shiwen didn't hide anything and directly told them the situation. Anyway, when the others rushed back, this news couldn't be hidden anymore. The expressions of the two finally changed. Before going to the battlefield, no one had thought that there would be such a dangerous situation, especially since even the good fortune universe map had been moved away. In their opinion, it was indeed foolproof. Even if the demon era used the heaven-splitting demonic axe, it would be useless. In terms of true strength, the Fortune God dynasty still had an overwhelming advantage. But now it seemed that this overwhelming advantage was almost used by the demon era to turn the tables. TSK, this demon era is really ruthless. In order to scheme against us, they even schemed against the other ancient eras. Xianyuan Heavenly Master also clicked his tongue in amazement. This was simply not as simple as being ruthless. If they won this war, then it would be fine. But if they didn't achieve the desired effect, then the blame of the other ancient eras would be unavoidable. However, considering that those ancient eras also had deep hatred for each other, and that it wasn't just a day or two of war, everything was understandable. In any case, the deep hatred wasn't just a day or two. But you've completely destroyed their strategic plan. Now, those people from the demon era probably hate you to death. Xianyuan Heavenly Master said with a loud laugh. The Heavenly Church's hierarch couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for Yi Shiwen. In his opinion, although Yi Shiwen was strong, he was far from being able to change the situation of the battle. Even so, he was still able to achieve such a result in the epic battlefield. Indeed, he was not an ordinary person. Hate them to death, hate them to death. But this war can be considered a lose-lose. Apart from the Demon Era's army that left early, the other ancient era's allied army suffered heavy losses. Each era had heavenly masters falling, and although we have my reminder, we still lost a third of our army. In addition to the 10 Divine Cities' army, the losses in the Battle of Moon City, and the Moon City being razed to the ground, overall, no matter how you look at it, it can only be considered a lose-lose. Yi Shiwen said with a hint of regret. In a situation where they had the advantage in defense, both sides still suffered heavy losses. One had to admit that the Demon Era was indeed powerful. Chapter 3587. This battle was also a slap to the face for the Fortune God dynasty. Since the establishment of the 10 great divine cities on the battlefield of the eras, they had never suffered such a huge loss. If it wasn't for the Fortune God dynasty's deep foundation, any other force would have been defeated long ago. This battle couldn't be considered a complete victory. Fortunately, they managed to reclaim Moon City in the end. In fact, most of the ancient era's allied forces were eliminated. This was the greatest achievement of the Devil Dao era. This was really ironic. The Heavenly Dao sect leader and Xianyuan Tianzuan Ling Ren didn't say anything either. This battle wasn't a good thing for them either. Although they were opposing the Fortune God dynasty on a small matter, in essence, they were still bound together by the Fortune God dynasty. After the Heavenly Dao sect leader arrived, some other people also arrived. These people could be considered old faces. They were the people that Yi Shiwen had rescued on the path of creation. Compared to their previous dire situation, their current situation was much better. Many of them had already recovered to the equivalent of the 6th realm, and even the 7th realm. It was already very hard for them to recover to this extent in such a short period of time, because they were lacking too much. For them, being trapped on the path of creation for all these years was undoubtedly a stagnation. Looking at these heavenly venerables, Yi Shiwen suddenly understood why the Fortune God dynasty had rescued them. The existence of these heavenly venerables was extremely important to the Fortune God dynasty. With them, the Fortune God dynasty's strength would soar by leaps and bounds. However, for the local super sects and super races in the eastern region, their appearance would undoubtedly cause another problem: the competition for resources and territories. For the original rulers like the Heavenly Tao sect and the Silver Moon clan, these heavenly venerates who returned later were undoubtedly a huge challenge. Of course, the human race that Yi Shiwen represented was actually also a rising star. He was in the position of a challenger. However, relatively speaking, it was still acceptable because the human race had risen by swallowing the heaven-devouring demon clan's territory. In fact, the conflict between the human race and the heaven-devouring demon clan was not that big. In addition, Yi Shiwen's strength was still very weak. The foundation of the human race was also shallow. So, he was still far from being able to challenge a religion or a race. But with the return of these veteran Empyreans, things were completely different. Under normal circumstances, the rise of an Empyrean would take a very long time, and there would be enough time to restore the balance of power bit by bit. But now, a group of them had suddenly appeared, and each of them had the desire to divide up the eastern region's territory. Thus, the final result would only be a fierce conflict. With so many heavenly venerables acting at the same time, rivers of blood would flow, and mountains would change color. This level of chaos was something that the Fortune Divine dynasty could not allow. This was also the reason why after these veteran heavenly venerables returned, other than taking revenge on the forces that had suppressed their sects and tribes, they had not taken any action. Other than the fact that they weren't in peak condition, their words weren't firm. More importantly, the Fortune Divine dynasty was pressuring them from above. This was also the reason why they didn't take action during the foreign allied forces raid. Since the Fortune Divine dynasty didn't allow them to fight, then they would borrow the foreign allied forces' hand to clear up the territories. When the foreign allied forces retreated, the forces that had been invaded would either be annihilated or surrendered to the enemy. Needless to say, annihilation was a given. Even if those who surrendered to the enemy didn't die, they would be crushed to death by the foreign allied forces. Killing many birds with one stone, everyone was happy. Of course, this happy party didn't include the Fortune Divine dynasty. This time, when the foreign allied forces retreated, the Fortune Divine dynasty suffered a heavy blow in one fell swoop. From all aspects, the Fortune Divine dynasty's control over the world was lacking by a little bit. Especially since the Fortune Divine dynasty had too many sworn enemies, and now they had begun to rebel. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen couldn't help but feel a headache. These Empyreans usually looked aloof, but in fact, when it came to fighting for territory, there was no difference. When these Empyreans saw Yi Shiwen, they revealed a faint smile and stepped forward to greet him. Although they were all senior Empyreans, Yi Shiwen's strength had won their recognition. They had seen Yi Shiwen's invincible might when he killed several great Empyreans. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had saved their lives before, so they naturally had to accept this favor. "All right, now everyone is here." Yi Shiwen glanced at the Empyreans and said, "Before we get down to business, I have another matter to tell everyone. I believe everyone wants to know the current situation on the battlefield. These days I've heard a lot of rumors, so I'll tell everyone all at once. This time, my Fortune Divine dynasty won a complete victory and inflicted heavy losses on the ancient era. The Devil Path era retreated with the heaven-splitting Devil Axe, not daring to come to Full Moon City," Yi Shiwen said faintly. Although this was a Pyrrhic victory for the Fortune Divine dynasty, he was not wrong in saying so. The ancient era had indeed suffered heavy losses, and the Devil Path era had also escaped with the heaven-splitting Devil Act. However, Huang Xiaolong did not mention the price that the Fortune God dynasty had to pay. Actually, there was no need to hide these things, but these veteran heavenly venerables were more cunning and difficult to control. Before the Fortune God dynasty's main force returned, Huang Xiaolong needed to subdue them. The other Empyreans did not doubt him and nodded. This was a matter of course. With the Fortune Divine dynasty's strength and the Fortune Universe map, it would be strange if it wasn't so. Only the Heavenly Tao Sect Master and Xianyuan Empyrean knew a little. So, I don't want any strange rumors to spread. Now, the Eastern region is mostly in the hands of people like you and me. Pass down my order, stop these rumors. Yi Shiwen said faintly. Everyone nodded. They were very clear about what those rumors were. Even if they wouldn't lower themselves to spread such rumors, they more or less secretly acquiesced to it. Now that the Fortune Divine dynasty's main army had returned, they naturally had to stop the original rumors. Now that everyone knows that the main army is returning, you can rest assured. What we need to do next is to organize a coalition army to counterattack and drive out the foreign coalition army. I don't care about what happened before, but from now on, if anyone dares to slack off, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Yi Shiwen said. Fellow Taoists, you don't need to doubt whether I have the means or the qualifications. Before returning, the Middle Heavenly Venerables had entrusted the Eastern region's affairs to me, so I think I am qualified to take charge of the overall situation. Yi Shiwen had returned first. The Middle Heavenly Venerables still needed some time, but it was only a matter of time. The main thing was that the Middle Heavenly Venerables still needed to stay in Moon City for a while. They were afraid that the demonic era would come back with the heaven-splitting demonic act. If that happened, then all their previous efforts would have been in vain. If someone else wanted to take charge of the overall situation, I wouldn't be convinced. But since it's fellow Taoist Wu, I think there won't be a problem. At this time, a veteran Heavenly Venerable said. At this time, Yi Shiwen's life-saving grace for these veteran Heavenly Venerables played a huge role. It would have been impossible for them to accept a junior as the leader of the Allied forces if that wasn't the case. In fact, they wouldn't have agreed even if it was the dean of the Heavenly Tao sect. So, they wouldn't have agreed to it. Unless it was a legitimate ruler of the Eastern region like the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. However, at this time, they still owed Yi Shiwen a huge favor. Naturally, they wouldn't go against Yi Shiwen. Moreover, the Eastern region really needed such a backbone now. For various reasons, they didn't plan to stand out, so they could only let Yi Shiwen be the leader. Yes, I also agree. I don't agree with anyone except Wu Daoist. The other veteran Heavenly Venerables also nodded and echoed. They also realized what it meant for Yi Shiwen to return as a representative of the Middle Heavenly Venerables. It meant that he was the successor of the Eastern Heavenly Venerables. Originally, the Middle Heavenly Venerables' recommendation of Yi Shiwen as a candidate was just a joke. In terms of connections, he didn't have any. In terms of achievements, he didn't have any. In terms of strength, he didn't have any. But now, when Yi Shiwen met all the requirements, he became a hot topic in everyone's hearts. Especially when he swept the outer Heavenly Venerables led by chaotic Heavenly Venerables, it shocked these veteran Heavenly Venerables who were watching from afar. He was decisive and ruthless. He was definitely not an ordinary person. At this time, forming a good relationship with Yi Shiwen was forming a good relationship with the future Eastern Heavenly Venerables. The most important thing was to avoid the future Eastern Heavenly Venerables making things difficult for them in the future. At this time, everyone looked at Xianyuan Heavenly Venerables and the Heavenly Tao Sect Master who were sitting in their seat. At this time, only the two of them hadn't expressed their opinion. and these two were the top heavenly venerables in the entire Eastern Territory. If this plan couldn't get their approval, then it would be a joke. "Why are you all looking at me? I have no opinion." Xianyuan heavenly venerables saw everyone looking at him and immediately jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "In any case, you guys can make the decisions. I'll just be a hired thug and help the Allied forces solve some problems." Xianyuan heavenly venerables had always been free and unrestrained, and his unrestrained nature was vividly reflected here. He, a dignified peak heavenly venerables, was being compared to a hired thug without any hesitation. This made the other heavenly venerables sweat profusely. Didn't this mean that they were also the so-called hired thugs? Thinking of this, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then they all turned their attention to the heavenly Tao sect master. As if finally noticing everyone's gaze, the heavenly Tao sect master thought for a long time before finally saying, "Heavenly Tao sect can fully cooperate with the Allied forces without any objections." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.